Chapter 73. They had to go to breakfast. Harry knew it. He needed to show his face, assess the damage from the night before, both at the school and the ministry. He had to understand the narrative before it twisted beyond his control. But Merlin, he didn't want to. With a groan of protest, he felt Draco chuckle softly beside him. "Come on," Draco urged. "Best to get it over with now. Go to breakfast, check the paper, visit the hospital wing, then you can hide again." A gentle kiss landed on Harry's shoulder. "You know it's necessary." Harry did know, but that didn't make him any more eager to face the day. Reluctantly, he uncurled himself from Draco's embrace and reached for his glasses on the bedside table. I suppose. It was already nearly 9 o'clock. Fortunately, it was a Saturday. He couldn't imagine having to face more classes after this, or worse, exams. The room provided a bathroom, and the two of them shared a shower, with Draco helping Harry wash away the tiny glass particles and debris from his messy hair. When they emerged, clean clothes awaited them on the bed, likely thanks to one of the house elves. Once he was dressed, Harry felt his nerves start to rise. Draco took his hand and kissed the back of it. "It's going to be fine. Just keep your head up and use all that Gryffindor arrogance," he teased. Harry laughed, but then his green eyes softened with concern. "Will you be all right?" They would have to go to breakfast separately, and Draco would have to confront the entire school knowing his father had died. More than that, he had died a Death Eater, trying to kill Harry Potter. Draco nodded, and by the time he let go of Harry's hand, the mask of the Slytherin Ice Prince was firmly in place. "I'll see you later," he promised, and then he was gone. Harry took 5 long, steadying breaths alone in the room, convincing himself to face the day ahead. Harry forced himself not to turn around and retreat back to bed, then followed Draco out into the hall. The school was still in a state of disarray, but the more pressing issues seemed to have been resolved. Whatever had been happening on the 6th floor, which had required the entire staff's attention, had left no trace behind. The entrance hall was back to normal, aside from one lonely, half-deflated beach ball resting in a corner. As Harry walked through the hall, students stared at him wide-eyed, whispering among themselves, but he chose to ignore them. "Breakfast, hospital wing, out," he repeated to himself like a mantra as he stepped into the great hall, instantly silencing the entire room. The students were mixed at the house tables, and Harry spotted a small cluster of HA members at the end of the Hufflepuff table, so he made his way over. His gaze flicked to the Slytherin table as he passed. Draco sat there, looking as stoic as Harry had expected, flanked by Theo, Pansy and Millie to keep the curious at bay. "Susan's in the hospital wing, but she's fine," Harry said as he sat down, directing his words to Hannah and Ernie. "She wanted me to tell you to come visit as soon as you can. She should be getting released soon." The Hufflepuffs beamed with relief. "Brilliant, thank you," Hannah said, her voice filled with gratitude. "You'd best take a look at this." She handed him a copy of that morning's Prophet, and a wave of trepidation rose like bile in Harry's throat. The headline was just as he had feared. "You Know Who Alive Attacks Ministry." Some brave soul had captured a photograph of Voldemort in the act of grabbing Bellatrix to flee, dominating the front page. In the corner of the picture, Harry could see himself, battle-worn and scowling. He skimmed the article, his lips pursing in response. It wasn't as bad as he had anticipated. Dumbledore had clearly taken control of the narrative, explaining how he had learned about the attack and brought some concerned Harry had always hoped for the support of his fellow citizens, but somehow he and his friends had managed to infiltrate the scene and confront the Death Eaters themselves. The article made it sound as though the students had been struggling until the order arrived. Harry glared at that particular section of the piece. Further down, he noticed a quote from Amelia Bones, who credited Harry for raising the alarm at the Ministry with his Patronus message. What followed was a lengthy, insincere segment filled with flattery from the prophet, who seemed eager to backtrack on everything they had previously said about Harry being a liar and a lunatic. At the end of the article, it mentioned that a handful of Death Eaters had been captured, but their names wouldn't be released until they had been questioned and processed. There was also a near footnote stating that Lord Lucius Malfoy was known to have perished in the attack, as if he had merely stumbled upon the Death Eaters and been struck by a stray spell. Harry swallowed back a wave of disgust. Even now, so many people had been bribed by Lucius Malfoy that they were unwilling to outright accuse him. But word would get out regardless. From the murmurs in the hall, it seemed that it already had. "Monday's classes have been cancelled," Anthony informed him, "while the teachers put the school to rights over the weekend." "What happened to Umbridge?" Harry asked, genuinely curious. The group around him shared smug grins. "She's in the hospital wing," Parvati replied, "but I think the Auras will be coming for her soon. There have already been about 30 howlers from parents of kids who sent letters out last night, since she was too busy to monitor them. Everyone knows about the blood quill." That was good news. Now that Fudge was in disgrace, Umbridge might actually face consequences. Harry could see that everyone had questions, and he didn't blame them. The prophet certainly hadn't covered everything. But Harry was just so tired. "The others should be getting out of the hospital wing soon," he said, piecing together his thoughts. Harry grabbed a sandwich and a hard-boiled egg. "I'm going to head up and see how they're doing. I'll take Neville and Ginny back to Gryffindor," he said, knowing he would probably spend the rest of the day there. "Okay, we're going to help the teachers clean up the school," Padma declared, gesturing to her fellow prefects. "Any help would be appreciated if the rest of you aren't busy." Harry left them sorting that out, munching on his sandwich as he walked, casting glares at anyone who looked like they might ask him about the night before. He felt one set of eyes burning into him more than any other, and paused in the doorway to glance back at Albus Dumbledore. The headmaster did not look impressed. Harry grinned and offered a little wave before continuing on his way. So what if Dumbledore thought he was Voldemort incarnate? Harry was back in the good graces of the wizarding world, thanks to Amelia Bones. Now that the fight had begun, he could work on tarnishing Dumbledore's reputation so that no one would listen to the old man anyway. As Harry made his way to the hospital wing, he noticed teachers and students alike trying to restore order to the school. They were repairing suits of armor, cleaning stains off the walls, and vanishing remnants of strange and bizarre magic. Most of the students were members of the HA, and Harry felt a swell of pride as he watched them assist, clearly impressing the teachers with their magical skills. Several waved at him as he passed, and he waved back but didn't stop to chat. The hospital wing was quiet, with one bed curtained off far away from the students, most likely Umbridge. To Harry's surprise, despite the chaos of the previous night, there seemed to be only a handful of students in beds, aside from his own friends. Those 5 were gathered around one bed, dressed in clean clothes and looking none the worse for wear after their ordeal. "Harry," Neville greeted cheerfully, "we were just wondering if you'd show up. Madam Pumphrey says we're all good to go." "Glad to hear it," Harry replied, looking at them with amazement on his face. "Listen, guys, last night, that was far more than I should have asked of you, and I'm sorry. But you all did brilliantly. You were fantastic." "Those Death Eaters didn't know what hit them," Ginny said vindictively, her eyes flashing. "Don't apologize, Potter. We knew what we were getting into," Daphne added. "Also, here, you'll want this back." She slipped him a palm-sized glass orb, winking. Harry grinned and quickly hid it away in his pocket. "Wait, was that—" Susan gaped at him. "The prophecy I told Dumbledore I smashed?" "Maybe." Harry kept his voice low. It had been easy to speak with conviction against both Voldemort and Dumbledore, to let them see him looking on in horror as a glass orb slipped from his hand and shattered on the ground. But it wasn't the same orb he had pulled from the shelf. That one he had passed to Daphne while they ran, concealing the movement in all the chaos. Harry wasn't going to let any advantage in this war slip away. "You've been hanging out with your boyfriend too much," Neville teased, making Harry grin wider. "There are worse influences." Harry's gaze swept over the 5 students, 5 people he had hardly known 2 years ago, yet who had risked their lives for him without hesitation. "Thank you, all of you. I'd be dead if you hadn't come with me, and there would be a lot more Death Eaters still at large." He was eager to see the exact numbers, to find out how many his friends had subdued. "You don't need to thank us, Harry," Neville insisted, clapping him on the shoulder. "We were just doing what you taught us to do," Susan agreed. "Besides, it was fun," Ginny added, and they all laughed. "I've created a monster," Harry declared with a grin. Mock horror washed over Ginny as she playfully punched Harry on the arm. "Come on, let's get out of here before Pomfrey finds some reason to keep us longer," she urged. "I want to see what happened to the school before it's all cleaned up." "I can't believe the whole school went nuts so quickly," Daphne said, shaking her head in disbelief. "I know it's been building up all year, but—" Harry nodded in agreement. He hadn't anticipated such an explosive turn of events either. "I can't believe Umbridge used an unforgivable on a student in front of half the school. Good luck to her trying to worm her way out of that one." As they reached the doors, they bumped into Hannah and Ernie. Susan quickly hugged Harry and then joined her Hufflepuff friends. The rest of the group split up, with Luna heading back to Slytherin alongside Daphne, while the 3 Gryffindors made their way to their common room. Unfortunately for Ginny, most of the chaos had already been dealt with, but remnants of the upheaval still lingered. Harry was too tired to search for the best parts of the aftermath, especially since people were now looking at him with renewed interest. All he wanted was to go back to bed. Neville, however, insisted he join him for lunch, so Harry found himself accompanying his friend to the Great Hall. Ginny had vanished hours ago, apparently on a mission to hunt down some of the more entertaining pranks before they were restored to normalcy. It was a relief to see the hall returning to its former glory, free from Umbridge's oppressive decrees. Students sat wherever they pleased, chatting and laughing without fear of detention for disruptive behavior. Hogwarts felt joyful again. Harry took a seat at the Gryffindor table and reached eagerly for a plate of chicken drumsticks. "Is the prophet telling the truth, Harry?" Colin called from a few seats away, his eyes wide with excitement. "Did you really fight you-know-who at the Ministry last night?" "I did. So did Neville and Ginny, and Luna and Susan and Daphne. We all went." A wave of energy rippled through the table as Harry spoke. Chatter erupted after the proclamation. "Wow," Colin breathed. "And Dumbledore duelled him. You actually saw it?" Harry nodded. "Dumbledore showed up just as I met Voldemort." He noticed the collective flinch in the room. "In the atrium after we'd already battled a bunch of Death Eaters. Voldemort," another flinch, "was trying to kill me, so Dumbledore distracted him with a duel. Then the auras broke the wards and arrived with the minister, and Voldemort," this time there was less of a flinch, "grabbed Lestrange and made his escape." Katie Bell frowned. You mean Professor Dumbledore wasn't with you when you fought the Death Eaters? Harry hid a grin. It was never too early to start unravelling Dumbledore's stories. No, we were alone when we got there, he said. It was nearly 2 hours before anyone showed up, Neville added. And even then, Dumbledore never came down to the Department of Mysteries. That's where we were fighting, he explained. He didn't arrive until after all the fighting was over, when he came to take us back to school. All the Death Eaters who were still standing fled as soon as the anti-apparition wards broke. Wide-eyed gasps filled the room, followed by another wave of quiet chatter. The 6 of you fought Death Eaters for 2 hours all by yourselves? Colin's eyes sparkled with awe, more than Harry had ever seen before, which was saying something. Before Harry could respond, Neville smiled widely and clapped him on the shoulder. It's what Harry taught us to do, right? Fortunately, those who had overheard seemed more interested in spreading the news to as many friends as possible than in pestering Harry for more details. As Harry spotted Dumbledore entering the hall and making a beeline for the Gryffindor table, he tensed. "Hey, Nev, I'm going to go for a wander," he said quietly. "I want to avoid that conversation I really don't want to have." Hazel eyes flickered with understanding. Harry flicked his gaze to Dumbledore, and Neville nodded in agreement. "Cover for me?" "Yeah, no worries." Grinning in thanks, Harry stood up, grabbed an apple, and quickly headed in the opposite direction, toward the Point's hourglasses. The hidden Parseltongue passage was well concealed there, and as it closed swiftly behind him, Harry couldn't help but chuckle, picturing Dumbledore standing in the hall, puzzled about where he had gone. Once again, he found himself sneaking through the passage to Snape's office, though this time it was empty. That didn't bother him. A quick check of the map had him grinning as he made his way to the man's personal quarters. As the map indicated, Remus was there too, and Harry rushed into the man with a tight hug. "Oh, cub," Remus murmured, stroking his hair. "I'm so proud of you. Padfoot is too. You did brilliantly last night. I've been telling Severus all about it." Harry turned to the potions master, who nodded, a faint smile crossing his lips. "It seems you have been paying attention in our lessons. May wonders never cease," Harry snorted, recognizing the compliment for what it was. "How is everyone else? What's going on with the Order? Dumbledore mentioned Tonks is in the hospital." "She's fine. A compression curse hit her in the chest and broke a couple of ribs, punctured a lung, but they've got her all healed up. With a few days of rest, she'll be back on duty," Remus explained. "The rest of the injuries were minimal. Quite frankly, it was a walk in the park compared to the raid we'd just come from. Your lot took out half the opponents for us." He ruffled Harry's hair proudly, and Harry preened at the praise. With hot chocolate delivered by Kerry, the 3 of them settled comfortably in Snape's sitting room, and Harry recounted the events from the night before the Order had arrived. Snape explained that Draco had come straight to him with the news as soon as Harry and the others had already left, but once Umbridge began her rampage, there was little he could do. So he retreated to the safety of his office. "The students had it covered," he said dismissively. "Any Slytherin who didn't want to be involved had already been escorted to the common room. I decided to leave the rest to their own decisions." It was a roundabout way of saying he supported the dissent in the only way he could. "Well, I can't say much for what happened after the Ministry got involved," Remus replied with a shrug. "I got Sirius out of there as soon as we received notice that auras were on the way. From what I've heard, Kingsley took care of the whole situation. He made sure to send auras he trusted to sweep the entire department for any stray Death Eaters you lot had left tied up like turkeys." He shot Harry a teasing glance. "Hey, you're the ones who taught me to disarm and incapacitate as quickly as possible," Harry defended himself. I just passed that information along. There's going to be an order meeting this evening, Snape cut in. We need to discuss the impact of last night and how to move forward. We're already hearing reports of neutral families fleeing the country now that the Dark Lord's return is public. Harry's amusement faded quickly. We need to get the sanctuary plan in motion, he said, and Remus nodded in agreement. Sirius is going to come here in the morning and take you to the pottery, he relayed. It shouldn't take long for you to claim the blood wards. We can go from there. Will it be safe for me to leave? Harry asked, a hint of concern in his voice. Have you seen the state of the school, Potter? Snape pointed out. Albus will have far more important things on his mind. He wants to talk to me alone, Harry replied, his expression grim. Avoiding him for the rest of the week is going to be a pain. If he could just manage to make it to summer, he would be in the clear. You're no longer hiding your magic, Remus said, or your knowledge. Do whatever it takes. You can. He won't want to risk making a move in front of the rest of the school. You have the staff singing your praises. That should help keep him out of your hair, Snape added, eyeing Harry shrewdly. Apparently, since you burned the secrecy contract, members of your little club have been quite proudly telling their teachers who taught them the advanced magic they've been using to help clean up Umbridge's mess. Harry felt his cheeks flush. Oh, you're beginning to gain a reputation, the Slytherin informed him. I'm sure Albus is thrilled. That made both Remus and Harry snort. Well, as long as I'm allowed to irritate him now, I might as well do it properly, Harry remarked dryly. Oh, that reminds me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the prophecy orb. Both men froze. You said that was smashed, Remus breathed. Did I? Harry's expression turned entirely Slytherin. How silly of me. You managed to fool the two greatest legilimens in the country? Snape asked, looking both proud and horrified. Harry shrugged. The two most arrogant legilimens in the country, he corrected. I told them what they expected to hear, showed them basic proof, and they didn't question it. I did smash a prophecy, but this one was safe in Daphne's pocket the whole time. There was a beat of silence. Then Remus poked Snape in the shoulder. And you thought Sirius and I were all the influence he had. Not my responsibility, my arse. You've made him as sneaky as you are. Snape's pale cheeks turned vaguely pink. Harry wasn't quite sure what that was about, but he laughed regardless. Anyway, shall we see what it says? Are you sure you want us to be the ones to hear it? Snape asked, surprisingly cautious. Harry nodded without hesitation. I wish Sirius could be here too, but you can always tell him later. I trust you both. Harry had come to terms with Snape's involvement in the prophecy and the murder of his parents. The man had proven himself time and again, and he deserved to know the truth. Leaning forward, Harry removed the unbreakable charm he had placed on the orb and slammed it down firmly on the coffee table. Immediately, the ethereal form of Sybil Trelawney emerged from the shattered glass. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the 7th month dies, and the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal. But he will have power the Dark Lord knows not, and either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord will be born as the 7th month dies. With that she faded away, leaving a heavy silence in her wake. Harry stared at the small pile of glass shards, the words echoing in his mind. Well then, he croaked, clearing his throat, that's quite a bit to unpack. He looked up at the two men beside him. "What do you think that power refers to? Just my family magic, or—" He gestured toward his scar, hinting at the entire Horcrux situation. "It could refer to the Slytherin magic in particular," Snape suggested. "That is a significant enhancement to your abilities, one he would expect within himself rather than you. I believe the Horcrux is addressed in the latter part. Neither can live while the other survives." That was undeniably true. Harry couldn't truly live safely with the shard of Voldemort's soul in his head, and with the Dark Lord constantly trying to kill him. Voldemort would always have a lingering existence as long as part of his soul resided within Harry. And Dumbledore put a block on my power, probably thinking that the explosion of its release could be the power the Dark Lord knows not, Harry realized bitterly. "Indeed," Snape replied, his tone solemn and thoughtful. "This knowledge changes very little of our plans in all. Honesty. It doesn't indicate the number of Horcruxes or where they might be hidden. It's as vague and useless as most divination," Snape remarked. He was right, but the prophecy was far from useless. In fact, it had caused so much damage. "Business as usual, then," Harry said, forcing a cheerful tone into his voice. Remus and Snape both nodded. Business as usual. The following morning, right after breakfast, Harry made his way to Snape's quarters, skillfully avoiding Dumbledore's attempt to speak with him. When he arrived, Sirius was already waiting. The animagus pulled Harry into a rib-crushing hug. "I know we're on a tight schedule, and we can talk properly in the summer, but I am so incredibly proud of you, pup," he murmured, causing Harry's heart to clench. Sirius then turned to Snape. "If we're not back in an hour, you know what to do." Snape nodded, and then they were gone. For the second time in 3 days, Harry found himself unexpectedly travelling by portkey. This time it was easier, with Sirius's arms securely around him. They landed in Sirius's bedroom at Grimmauld Place. "I thought we were going to the pottery," Harry asked, confusion in his voice. Sirius nodded. "We are, but this is just in case anyone traces the portkey. We'll apparate the rest of the way, all right?" Harry's attention was caught by a T-shirt draped over the end of the bed, which he was fairly certain belonged to Charlie. He snapped back to focus and nodded. Sirius held him tight once more, and then they were spinning. "Here we are, Harry," Sirius said, his voice soft and oddly choked. "The pottery, your ancestral home." Harry looked up at the massive wrought-iron gates in front of them. They bore the Potter crest, and the magic radiating from them felt so familiar that he thought for a moment he might cry. Sirius nudged him. "Go on. They're blood-warded. They'll know you." Harry nodded and stepped up to the gates, placing a hand on the lock. Instantly, he felt a sharp prick on his finger, followed by a wave of warmth flooding through his body. The Potter magic was searching him, intertwining with the magic that resided in his core. It felt joyful, as if it was welcoming him home. With a click, the gates swung open, revealing the house ahead. It wasn't as grand as Serendu, but it possessed its own beauty. The large stone manor resembled the historic homes Aunt Petunia used to admire on television. The front lawn was a vibrant sea of wildflowers, and ivy climbed the front wall. To Harry's surprise, the house didn't appear as dilapidated as he had expected after 15 years of neglect. His thoughts were interrupted by 2 soft pops, and suddenly a pair of house elves appeared before him. They were nearly identical, dressed in neat, white, toga-like uniforms, and they looked up at him with tears glistening in their enormous brown eyes. "Master Harry has arrived," the elf on the left breathed in awe. "We have been hoping for many years this day would come." "Essie, Tinker, Is that you?" Sirius moved to Harry's side, and the elves let out a loud wail. "Master Sirius!" the elf on the right screeched, throwing itself at Sirius's knees and hugging him tightly. "Bloody hell, I didn't realize you two were still around." "We have been waiting, Master Sirius," the elf clinging to Sirius's legs cried. "We've been keeping house and hoping we would have family again." It took a few minutes to calm their sobs, and Sirius looked up at Harry, beaming. "Pup, this is Essie and Tinker. They've been Potter elves since before your dad was born." "Oh, it's nice to meet you." Harry hadn't expected to encounter elves. They both smiled up at him, still silently crying with joy. "Master Harry is looking just like his parents," Tinker exclaimed joyfully. "Miss Lily's pretty eyes, just like Master James wanted," Essie agreed. Harry felt a lump form in his throat. Beside him, Sirius chuckled. Even as kids, James would go on and on about how he wanted his and Evans's future kids to have her eyes, he reminisced fondly. Creepy little weirdo that he was. Harry snorted and turned back to the elves. I can't stay very long. I'm supposed to be at school." Both elves' expressions fell. "But there will be people here again soon. Having you two here is brilliant, actually." With 2 elves managing the place, the sanctuary would run much smoother and be better protected. "Could you show me to the wardstone, please?" "Yes, Master Harry, sir," Tinker chirped, and they were off. As they walked up the driveway, Harry shared his plans with the elves. They seemed a bit sad about his temporary absence, but were eager to welcome new guests to the manor. If time allowed, Harry would have loved a full tour. He promised to return for one as soon as summer began, even though he wasn't sure he was emotionally ready for it. The elves mentioned they had preserved everything as it was, including James's childhood bedroom and Sirius's room from when he had run away. For now, though, all Harry saw were the entrance hall, the basement stairwell, and the wardroom. Sirius had to wait outside, as he wasn't technically a member of the Potter family by blood or marriage, but he had already instructed Harry on what to do. Harry stepped forward and placed both hands on the glowing red wardstone, a perfectly smooth crystal about the size of a dragon egg. Instantly, magic surged through him, 100 times more intense than the magic of the gates. His knees almost buckled under the force, but Harry pushed his Potter magic to the forefront, making his intentions clear. He was not there to cause trouble. Harry focused intently, determined to claim his birthright without causing harm. The battle of wills stretched on for several minutes, but eventually he felt the pressure ease as the wards accepted him. They lingered in the back of his mind, a strange presence that allowed him to sense the 2 elves and Sirius within the house. His godfather had explained what it was like to hold house wards, especially old ones, but experiencing it firsthand was still odd. When Harry rejoined Sirius in the stairwell, his godfather was grinning. "Did you do it?" Sirius asked, beaming when Harry nodded in affirmation. "Brilliant. Well done, pup." Sirius bit his lip, a hint of hesitation creeping into his expression. "There's one more thing I considered, but I'm not sure if you'll want it, and I completely understand if you don't." Harry raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What is it?" "I thought we could do a Fidelius charm on the property," Sirius suggested. Harry's eyes widened in surprise, and Sirius misinterpreted his reaction, his face flashing with hurt. No, of course not. Not after the last one. That's just—" "No, Sirius, I didn't say that," Harry protested quickly. "I was just surprised." The idea made sense, an extra layer of protection for those who needed it. "Can we do a Fidelius charm?" Sirius nodded. "I mean, I know how, if that's what you're asking. I can make you the secret keeper if you want. That way you won't have to worry about the people you welcome here sneaking in anyone unsavory." "Let's do it," Harry said decisively. It certainly couldn't hurt. The spell turned out to be surprisingly less complicated than Harry had anticipated. "It's not all that difficult, but it takes power," Sirius explained. "And it relies so heavily on trust that a lot of people are too scared to use it." With the Fidelius charm, there were no consequences for the secret keeper sharing the secret, and no monitoring of how many or who they shared it with. But Harry knew he wouldn't tell anyone who didn't need to know. After hugging Sirius goodbye, he portkeyed back from Grimmauld to Snape's rooms, feeling the weight of the location securely in his mind. Harry felt a sense of safety as the wards of Potter Manor settled in the back of his mind, along with his newfound awareness of their presence. He glanced at Snape and offered a brief smile. "The pottery can be found on the northeast edge of Thetford Forest," he announced, feeling the magic flow between him and the potions master. Snape raised an eyebrow. "Fidelius, on top of the unplottable wards?" Harry nodded in agreement. "Good. Now get somewhere public before someone comes looking for you." Harry didn't mind being abruptly sent away from Snape's rooms. He had other places to be. Using the map, he sought out Theo and quickly found him alone on the grounds. "Hey," Harry greeted quietly, casting a ward as he approached the Slytherin. Theo was sitting on a bench not far from the greenhouses. "I have news for you." Harry took a seat beside him and leaned in, whispering the secret into Theo's ear. Theo's moss-green eyes widened. "It's still unplottable," Harry warned. "I'll give you a portkey on the train." "Thank you, Harry." Theo's whisper was hoarse, and as Harry looked closer, he noticed the boy's eyes were red-rimmed. A sudden realization hit him. "Theo, your dad wasn't at the ministry, was he?" Theo's mouth twisted into a sneer. "No. He was one of the Death Eaters torturing muggles up outside Manchester," he revealed bitterly. Harry winced. "Along with Cassius's uncles and cousins." Fuck. Harry wished Cassius would accept the offer of sanctuary. "You saved my life doing this, you know," Theo said matter-of-factly. Harry clasped his shoulder. "I'm glad I could help. And I'm glad you made the choice to let me." It couldn't be easy for Theo to go against a father like his. Harry had seen a similar struggle in Draco over the years, and that was with the support of his mother. Theo had no one until recently. As the Slytherin boy made his way back into the castle, he passed by Susan, but quickly retreated into his solitude. He spent a pleasant afternoon avoiding Dumbledore, lounging in front of the fire in the Gryffindor common room. It seemed everyone had already discussed the most intriguing parts of the Ministry's story. Now they were more concerned about the fallout, something Harry couldn't control. He decided to send a message to Blaise through Dobby, asking him to gather any kids whose families needed sanctuary and bring them to the Room of Requirement at 7. Blaise didn't disappoint. He arrived at the room at 6:55, and within 10 minutes there were 8 Slytherin kids of various ages gathered with them. Harry vaguely recognized some of them, but most were students he'd never interacted with before. "Okay, here's the plan," he began without hesitation. "I have an unplottable, Fidelius-protected building that I'm setting up as a sanctuary for anyone who needs to avoid persecution from either side of this war. I won't question your or your family's right to use it, but I ask that you do nothing to jeopardize anyone else living there. Treat each other with respect, regardless of your opinions. Remember, everyone else is here for the same reason you are. If you or your family can't abide by these rules, this isn't the place for you." One of the older Slytherins raised his hand. "What will we owe you for the use of this building?" he asked, his expression expectant. Harry resisted the urge to roll his eyes. "Nothing but what I've already said. You keep the others in the sanctuary safe, and you behave while you're there. If anyone wants to get more involved in the war, we can discuss that later, but it's not required." He ran a hand through his hair. "All I'm asking is that you keep my secrets just as I'm keeping yours." Several of the kids exchanged glances with Blaise as if to ask, "Is this guy for real?" "Is that really true?" Blaise smirked. "Harry isn't the type to collect debts," he assured them. "Gryffindors," he added wryly, which seemed to ease the doubts of the skeptics in the group. "How do we get our families there before he comes for us?" asked the youngest member, a timid second-year girl, her voice barely above a whisper. Harry grinned. "I'm glad you asked." It was a somewhat convoluted plan, but he was confident it would work. Chapter 74. Classes resumed on Tuesday, but the teachers didn't seem fully engaged. Flitwick spent the entire double period discussing the charms behind various wizarding sweets, all while letting the students sample them, of course. Since McGonagall was still away from the castle, their double transfiguration class turned into a free period. It was a beautiful day outside, so Harry was more than happy to accompany Neville toward the edge of the forest to check out a newly bloomed plant. As Harry wandered over to Hagrid's hut, he felt a pang of guilt. He hadn't seen his half-giant friend all school year. "Good to have you back, Hagrid," he said, settling onto the front step of the hut in the warm sunshine. Hagrid grinned widely. "Aye, good to be back. I hear you got into quite the adventure while I was away." Harry shrugged, raising his arms in a gesture that said, "These things happen." Hagrid chuckled. "Least you came out the other end all right." "I always do." "And everyone knows you've been telling the truth now," Hagrid added with encouragement. "You and Professor Dumbledore." Suddenly the expression on Hagrid's face turned serious. "He's worried about you, you know." "I know, but he doesn't need to be." Harry's stomach twisted. One of these days he would have to talk to Hagrid about a big decision regarding their friendship, and he wasn't sure how it would turn out. "Hagrid, we're friends, right? And you trust me?" "Of course," Hagrid replied without hesitation. "Good. Then, when it comes to Professor Dumbledore and the way things go between us, just remember that, okay?" Hagrid frowned. "What do you mean?" "Nothing, just, I really hope we keep being friends, Hagrid, even as I get older and things change." A large hand landed heavily on his back. "You're not getting rid of me any time soon, Harry, don't you worry." Hagrid's grin faded slightly. "Even though I know you're going to tell me you're not taking my class for newts." Harry winced. He hadn't even thought about how to bring that up yet. "Hagrid, Nah, it's fine. It's not for everyone," Hagrid reassured him. "I reckon you've got classes that are a bit more important than mine to take." "You've been a great teacher, Hagrid," Harry said earnestly, "and it's a fun subject." But it just wasn't the right career path for him. "I'll still come visit when I can." "That's all right then," Hagrid declared, considering the matter settled. "We were friends before I started teaching you, and we'll be friends long after, I hope." Harry desperately wished that was true. He stayed with Hagrid a little while longer, avoiding the topic of Dumbledore, just as Hagrid sidestepped questions about the injuries he'd been dealing with all year, insisting he had it handled. As lunch drew closer, Harry decided to head back toward the castle. Neville seemed to have disappeared, either back to the castle or off to the greenhouses, leaving Harry to walk alone. In the entrance hall he froze. Draco, Crabbe and Goyle had just emerged from a side door, coming up from their common room. They stopped in their tracks at the sight of him. Harry's heart clenched. He hadn't had the chance to spend time with Draco since returning from the Ministry. Both of them were under far too much scrutiny to risk meeting up. There were only a few more days of term left. They could wait. But it still hurt Harry to see his boyfriend drifting around the school like a ghost in the wake of his father's death. It pained him not to know how much of that was just an act. Draco sneered, clearly gearing up to say something, and Harry braced himself for a confrontation. Then the door behind him opened, and Draco's face went even paler. "Everything all right, gentlemen?" Harry asked. Harry wheeled around at the sound of the voice, his face lighting up. "Professor McGonagall!" The Gryffindor housemistress looked more frail than he was used to seeing her, leaning heavily on a walking stick, but her eyes remained as sharp as ever. When he glanced back, he noticed that the 3 Slytherins had vanished. "Oh, let me help you with that, Professor," Harry insisted, stepping forward to reach for her bag. He waited for a nod of permission before taking it from her hand, along with her travelling cloak. "It's good to see you back." "I hear there was quite the ruckus in my absence," she replied. Even though he hadn't been involved in the mutiny against Umbridge, Harry still felt a blush creeping up his cheeks. "Walk with me, Potter." He fell into step beside her, matching her slow, limping pace. She declined assistance on the stairs, but Harry kept a respectful distance behind her, ready to help if needed. "I've been in touch with the rest of the staff while I was away, Mr. Potter, and, of course, I read the Prophet." Harry winced at the mention of the newspaper. "My colleagues have shared quite a bit about you," McGonagall continued, "particularly the feedback from those students who claim to have been under your tutelage all year." Umbridge wasn't wrong about the Secret Defense Club," Harry admitted, and he noticed her lips twitching slightly. "We all knew that from the start, Potter," she said dryly. "What we didn't know was just how comprehensive your curriculum appears to be. There are more useful spells in a fight than just curses and jinxes, Professor." "Indeed. And what about the healing charms, the conjuration? Professor Flitwick tells me some of his students say you taught them some rather advanced concealment spells." "I asked everyone what spells they wanted to learn," Harry replied dismissively, "so really it was a group effort." McGonagall's shrewd gaze made him want to squirm. "Indeed," she said flatly. "And the 5 students who accompanied you to the Ministry and, by all reports, aided you in the capture of no less than 14 Death Eaters." Harry hadn't heard that official number before, but it sounded about right and made him grin. "They asked to learn how to fight, so we learned together." It felt much better than admitting that Remus and Sirius had been training him in secret. "I had a bit of help from some Order members, but it's easy enough to teach people how to manage a solid stunner, disarming charm, and incarcerous charm. Those are the important ones." "I hear you also taught your friends to snap their opponent's wand." He couldn't tell if McGonagall sounded impressed or dismayed. "Only in a serious fight," he insisted, "but if their wand is snapped, they can't get it back and hex you with it." There was a moment of silence as McGonagall focused on climbing the last few stairs. Then she eyed him carefully. "Professor Dumbledore believes there are outside influences at work on you." Harry stifled a snort. The only outside influence was Dumbledore himself, and he had shed that. "I've learned over the last few years that Professor Dumbledore is not as omnipotent as he seems, nor as trustworthy." McGonagall's eyebrows shot up, but Harry held her gaze patiently. He wanted so badly for her to be on his side, to be willing to see Dumbledore for the man he truly was. "I believe Albus likes to think of himself as infallible," she finally replied, "and that can often lead to less than ideal results." It wasn't much, but it was enough. Harry's shoulders relaxed ever so slightly, and he shot a quick smile at his housemistress. "You know, Mr. Potter," she said, coming to a stop outside her office, "from everything I've heard, you would make an excellent teacher." Then she smiled, not wide, but bigger than anything he'd ever seen from the reserved woman. "Once you're done taking the Quidditch League by storm, of course." Harry grinned at her. "I'll certainly think about it." "Of course, Professor," he replied, having heard worse ideas. "You go ahead and do that." She accepted her bag and cloak back, then opened her office door. "I look forward to seeing your owl results, Potter." "I hope they're worth the anticipation," he joked. To his surprise, McGonagall placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "I can guarantee, Mr. Potter, that whatever is in those results will be something you should be proud of. Something your godfather and Professor Lupin will be proud of. Your parents certainly would be, if they were here to see it." She gave his shoulder a quick squeeze. "I am proud to have you as my student, both for what you have done at the Ministry and everything you have done for your fellow students over the past year." She narrowed her eyes knowingly. "Don't think I don't know where those care spells for those dreadful blood quill wounds began circulating." Ducking his head to hide his blush, Harry had to swallow against the lump in his throat. Thank you, Professor. That means a lot to hear." She patted his shoulder once more, then stepped into her office. "Oh, and do try to stay out of trouble for the rest of the week, Potter," she added wryly. "I may be back on my feet, but that is an extra stress I do not need." Harry laughed, offering his most innocent smile. "I'll try my best, Professor." Yes, there was definitely hope for Minerva McGonagall yet. Harry still didn't have his own subscription to the Prophet, but he was considering getting one. When Wednesday's headlines stared him in the face across the breakfast table that morning, he almost spit out his tea. Not as black as he seems? Death Eater captured at Ministry is confirmed. Peter Pettigrew. Sirius Black case to be reopened. "Hey, can I borrow that?" Harry asked. Alicia shrugged and handed the paper over. He read the article quickly. Evidently one of the still masked Death Eaters they had subdued during the battle in the Department of Mysteries had been Pettigrew all along. He was now in Ministry custody, awaiting questioning with Veritaserum. They were urging the public to come forward with any information regarding the incarceration or whereabouts of Sirius Black. Harry's heart raced, and he quickly searched for Susan at the Hufflepuff table. Thankfully, she was in her usual spot, and he hurried over to her. "Susan!" he called. "Harry," she replied, scooting over to make space for him. "You've seen the paper?" "Susan, You saw him, right? Fighting with us at the Ministry?" he asked quietly. She nodded, understanding exactly who he was referring to. "He was definitely on our side," she confirmed. "Will you write to your aunt?" he pleaded. "Tell her I'm willing to testify for whatever jury I need to, and ask her to look into my parents' wills if they had any." It always struck Harry as odd that his parents hadn't clarified the secret keeper in their wills in case of their deaths. "I will, but you can write to her yourself if you want," Susan pointed out. "I know after what happened the other night she wants to meet you properly." She grinned. "She told me to invite you over for dinner sometime this summer, if you're willing. Seems she wants to thank the boy who turned her niece into such a ruthless little warrior." "I'd be happy to," Harry responded brightly. I don't know what I'm doing this summer, though. I'll get back to you. Once your godfather is free, we'll invite you both over, Susan said, her voice filled with confidence. Harry couldn't help but hug her tightly. Sirius could be free. Meanwhile, at Grimmauld Place, Sirius Black was staring at the same newspaper headline, his hands clenched tightly around the paper, his heartbeat a furious drum in his otherwise empty mind. "Sirius, what's the matter?" Charlie asked, yawning. Charlie had stayed the night and was busy at the stove cooking omelettes. He hadn't noticed the post arrive until he heard a noise from Sirius, a sound that was part yelp, part groan. Charlie looked over and then dropped the frying pan with a clatter. "Holy hell!" he exclaimed, rushing to Sirius's side. He placed a warm hand on Sirius's shoulder, leaning in to read the headline. Sirius struggled to gather his thoughts, but he focused on the grounding pressure of Charlie's hand until he could finally breathe normally again. "They got Pettigrew," he breathed, his eyes wide with astonishment. He craned his neck to meet Charlie's gaze. "They've caught Pettigrew. They're looking into my trial. And Kingsley's on it, so you know he won't let the rat escape," Charlie added, a smile spreading across his face as he stroked the curve of Sirius's neck. His dimples appeared, and he beamed at him. "You're going to be free, sweetheart." Sirius surged up, dropping the paper to tangle his fingers in Charlie's fiery hair, his other hand bracing on Charlie's shoulder. They kissed passionately, pouring all their relief and joy into the embrace. They were so wrapped up in each other that they didn't notice the fire in the grate flare green, but they did hear the scream. Molly Weasley stood before the hearth, staring at them in utter shock. But Charlie!" She snapped out of her daze, her face rapidly turning red. "Sirius Black, what in Merlin's name do you think you're doing with my son? Charlie, get away from him!" she urged, her voice high-pitched and alarmed. "He wasn't doing anything I didn't want, Mum," Charlie insisted, his tone firm, making Molly's eyes bulge. "But he's so much older, and a criminal," she exclaimed. "Wrongly convicted, as you well know," Sirius replied, rising to his feet and glaring at her. Whether it was the news of his impending freedom or the certainty of his feelings, he stood his ground. With Charlie's hand on his shoulder, Sirius suddenly felt invincible, ready to confront Molly Weasley about her judgment. "Charlie is a grown man, Molly. He doesn't need you making decisions for him." "He is my son," Molly shot back. "I won't have you manipulating him into a relationship he thinks he wants. He's barely older than Harry. He's 8 years older than Harry, and how dare you accuse me of manipulating him?" Something within Sirius snapped, unleashing a year's worth of pent-up anger. "I don't care if you don't think I'm good enough for him. Hell, I agree with you. But you will not do him the disservice of thinking he isn't capable of making his own choices about who he wants to be with. And more than that, you will not accuse me of forcing him into anything in my own house. Or have you forgotten that, Molly?" As he spoke, the plates on the counter began to rattle. "This is my house, where I've allowed you and your family to stay for weeks, completely free of charge. You've eaten my food, enjoyed the safety of wards that I maintain, and not once have I heard a word of gratitude. All you've done is act like you own the place, talk down to me, belittle me in front of my godson, the Order, and your own children. You treat me like I'm some filthy criminal, when we all know I never deserved to be in Azkaban. You've treated my home like it's a den of dark magic, too good for your precious children, trying to throw out my family heirlooms without so much as asking if I might want to keep them. And now you come in here, entirely uninvited, might I add, and try to convince the man I love that he shouldn't be with me? Well, I have had enough." Molly turned pale, and Sirius glared at her. "I am barring you from the house wards, Molly. You're no longer welcome here." But the order." "Not my problem," Sirius snapped. "If you don't like it, take it up with Dumbledore." As far as he was concerned, they could all bugger off. "Now get out of my house." Charlie, please, come with me. Can't you see this man is dangerous?" Molly implored, her eyes pleading as she turned to her son. But Charlie's hand remained firmly on Sirius's shoulder. "No, Mum, he's not. I'm staying here." Molly looked at him, tears brimming in her eyes, but when he didn't budge, she huffed in frustration. "Fine." She turned to the fire, grabbed a handful of flue powder from the tin, and disappeared in an instant. Immediately the anger drained from Sirius as if someone had pulled the plug. He was breathing heavily, leaning back against Charlie's broad chest. "I'm sorry," he said hoarsely, realizing a bit too late that his approach might not have been the best. "Charlie, But before he could finish, Charlie pressed his mouth against Sirius's, kissing him fiercely and spinning him around to pin him against the table by his hips. "Watching you stand up for yourself was so incredibly sexy," Charlie rasped, his lips trailing down Sirius's stubbled jaw. "Merlin, sweetheart, don't apologize. Mum's had that coming for months." Sirius felt light-headed, caught up in a whirlwind of relief, euphoria, and a dozen other emotions that made it hard to breathe. He gripped the back of Charlie's t-shirt, seeking some form of grounding. "I need to write to Amelia Bones," he said dazedly. "Not yet," Charlie replied, stroking his shoulder gently. "You're still shaking." Sirius realized he was right. His body trembled, threatening to unravel under the weight of so many overwhelming emotions. The table digging into the back of his thighs provided some anchor, but he needed more. "Upstairs," he gasped, and Charlie pulled him along. Sirius turned to look at him properly, and those stunning sapphire eyes sparkled with desire. "I need you." "Now that sounds like a much better plan," the dragon tamer replied, his voice wrapping around Sirius like a warm embrace. "I'll take you upstairs and make you feel so good you'll see stars. Then you can write all the letters you want." He kissed Sirius fiercely, and when he pulled back his expression softened, something deeper igniting in his gaze. "And then we can talk about how you told my mum you love me." Sirius's heart skipped a beat. He had said that, hadn't he? But Charlie was smiling, and he was still there, so maybe it was okay. As the end of term approached, it didn't arrive with a bang, but rather with a sigh of relief. Dumbledore's end-of-year speech was as vague and unhelpful as ever, filled with reminders to trust in the power of love and to always seek the light in the darkness, along with other such clichés. The House Cup had been awarded to Ravenclaw, who had amassed a grand total of 67 points, an impressive feat considering it was only a week since what everyone was calling the Umbridge incident. Cornelius Fudge had officially been dismissed, and the search for an interim minister was underway. It seemed no one wanted to risk a proper vote with the country in such turmoil. Harry quietly hoped Amelia Bones would get the position. Finally, the students had packed their bags, the seventh years had shed their tears, and Harry was on his way to the train station, ready to close the chapter on another year at Hogwarts. "Harry, my boy!" The call sent a wave of annoyance through him. He had successfully avoided Dumbledore for the past week, employing more and more elaborate methods of escape. He thought he was free. Evidently, he was mistaken. "Headmaster, I really must get to the station," Harry said, continuing through the entrance hall. Dumbledore stepped closer, a faint frown creasing his brow. "I only need a moment of your time," he insisted. Harry snorted, doubting that would happen. "Sir, I don't want to miss the train. Can't it wait until next year?" By then the stage would be set, and Dumbledore likely wouldn't want to talk to him at all. "I suppose I can come and see you at your godfather's house," the headmaster remarked. Harry forced a smile to mask his amusement. If Dumbledore thought he could find him at Grimmauld Place, he had another thing coming. "Very well, then. I shall see you soon, Harry." "Goodbye, sir." Harry jogged to catch up with Neville, who eyed him warily. "What did he want?" the blonde asked. Harry shrugged. "The usual. He says he'll stop by Sirius's place for a chat this summer." He rolled his eyes, and Neville snorted in response. "Good luck to him on that." They joined the crowd of students heading for the station, soon finding a compartment filled with Ginny, Luna, Daphne and Blaise. The two Slytherins had fit seamlessly into the group, thanks to their partners, even if Blaise's was no longer at school. Harry had been delivering letters between them and Remus and Carey since the twins had left, and their relationship seemed to be thriving. "You should come visit this summer," Ginny said to the two Slytherins. "Luna only lives just over the fields from me, and I'm sure George would come home if you were around," she added, glancing at Blaise, who smirked. "Considering I plan to spend at least 3 weeks of summer at his flat, I don't need to visit you to see my boyfriend," he said. "But I'll keep it in mind." "Please, someone come visit," Ginny begged. "Otherwise it'll just be me and Ron." Harry grimaced in sympathy, and he wasn't alone in that sentiment. "You can come stay with me," Neville offered, then flushed bright pink. "I mean, Gran wants to meet you properly, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind if you wanted to come over for a week or two." "2, or more, or less, whatever, really," Ginny laughed, giving her babbling boyfriend a quick peck on the cheek. "I'd love to," she assured him. "Talk to your Gran and let me know." "I'm going to be a bit all over the place, but you're always welcome at Sirius's place," Harry replied. He hadn't mentioned anything about Charlie yet, even though Sirius had told him that Bill proposed to Fleur the day after the battle at the Ministry. Those details weren't his to share. As the conversation shifted to various summer plans, Harry looked out the window, watching the green hills of the Highlands roll by. "I'm going to have a wander," he said, getting to his feet. "I'll be back in a bit." They waved him off, unconcerned, and Harry stepped into the train corridor. He peeked into compartments as he passed, searching for familiar faces. He stumbled upon one filled with Gryffindor 7th years, fresh from their graduation ceremony. Angelina and Alicia dragged him inside, wrapping him in hugs, and insisting he promised to find good replacements for them as chasers, but not too good, since they wanted him to miss them. In another compartment, a group of Hufflepuffs from his year caught his attention. While Megan Jones and Oliver Rivers regarded him coolly, Susan and the others were eager to chat. Harry was still surprised by how many people he knew at school. It felt even more significant now, especially since he'd done the HA. He waved back at all sorts of people, exchanging friendly words and well wishes for the summer. Many of his friends promised to keep in touch. He had come a long way from being the boy who only had Ron and Hermione. Speaking of them, he found Ron and Hermione in a compartment with Dean and Seamus. Hermione was absorbed in a book while the 3 boys played Exploding Snap. Harry didn't stop to chat, but as he glanced in, Hermione caught his eye and gave him an unreadable look that made him feel vaguely uncomfortable. He moved on quickly, relieved to find Cho with the Hufflepuff 7th years. A few compartments down, Harry noticed a group of boys who all showed signs of having cried. Cho was holding the picture of Cedric that had been displayed in the room of requirement for so long. "Don't be a stranger, eh, Potter?" Patrick said, reaching out to shake Harry's hand. If you need us, we'll be there. Cho knows where to find us." "I'll keep that in mind," Harry promised, his tone serious. All the boys were skilled duelists after their time in the DA, and he would gladly fight alongside them any time. Cho hugged him tightly and kissed his cheek. "Write me this summer if you can." "I will, yeah." He wouldn't have any restrictions on his mail this time, and he was really looking forward to it. Continuing on his way, Harry paused briefly to peek into a compartment full of Slytherins, namely Draco, Theo, Pansy, Millicent and Cassius. After checking the corridor, he slipped in quickly, warding the door so no one could see through it. "Oh, it's you," Pansy sighed, and Harry couldn't help but snort. "Nice to see you too," he replied dryly. He turned to Draco. "We're a Dumb and Dumber." "Bathroom," Draco explained, "so you've got a bit of time." He reached for Harry, pulling the Gryffindor into his lap unceremoniously and kissing him firmly. "Draco, must you?" Millicent sighed. Harry felt Draco raise a hand, and he was sure his boyfriend had just flipped her off. Reluctantly, Harry pulled back. "I didn't actually come here for that," he said, though he certainly wasn't complaining. "I just wanted to check that you're all okay going home." He knew Pansy's father was one of the Death Eaters arrested at the Ministry, though unfortunately Theo's father was not, but all of them still had active Death Eaters in their families. "We'll be fine, Potter," Pansy assured him. "And if we're not, we know where to go." Harry had given them the Floo address for Remus's place. Harry had a cottage he rarely used, kept just in case they needed a quick escape. "Cassius?" he asked, still feeling uneasy about letting the newly graduated Slytherin return to his uncle and brother. "I'll stay as long as I can," the dark-haired boy replied. "I told my uncle I got a flat, so I shouldn't have to put up with them for too long. I'll be able to be at Ollie's." A look of relief crossed his face at the thought of seeing his boyfriend again. "Good, but if they start talking about marking—" Harry trailed off, and Cassius nodded sharply. After the chaos at the Ministry, Voldemort would likely be looking to replenish his ranks. Cassius might not be able to come up with excuses for very long. "Theo, do you have your portkey?" Theo nodded, patting his pocket. He would head straight to meet Charlie off the train, who would take him to the pottery. He wouldn't be alone for long. "Good," Harry turned to Draco, frowning. "And you're sure I can't convince you to come home with me?" He wanted Draco and his mother safe in Serendue. "Mother is now the Lady of Malfoy Manor," Draco pointed out quietly, a smirk on his face. "Somehow I don't think she'll be chased out of her own home quite so easily." From what Harry knew, Narcissa was playing the role of the dutiful mourning wife and Death Eater, and she would continue until her son was safely home. She was being remarkably evasive about her plans beyond that point. "Just be careful," Harry urged, brushing Draco's hair out of his eyes. Draco's gaze softened. "We're Slytherins, remember? Not reckless Gryffindor fools. We'll be just fine, and I'll see you soon." Soon felt too vague to Harry. "You all, close your eyes," he warned, then leaned in to press his lips against Draco's, inhaling his familiar scent, wanting to savor their kiss before they had to part. They had been separated for what felt like an eternity. The kiss lingered until one of the others, clearly fed up, doused them with an aguamenti spell. Harry spluttered, pulling away from Draco, and shot an annoyed glare at an unapologetic Pansy. A quick spell dried them off, and Harry leaned in for one last kiss before standing up. "Fine, fine, I'm going," he said with mock irritation. "Stay in touch, all of you." He cast a disillusionment charm on himself, removed the ward from the door, and exited the compartment, finally making his way back to his own. For now, he felt satisfied. By the time the train was pulling into the platform, Harry was half asleep, sprawled across the bench seat with his head in Ginny's lap and his legs resting on Neville's. He groaned as the train came to a stop, reluctantly dragging himself into a sitting position. "Oh, I can't wait to finally be able to relax," he declared emphatically, earning several murmurs of agreement. Between Dumbledore, Umbridge and everything else, Harry felt like he hadn't truly relaxed since Christmas. "I'll write soon," Daphne promised, leaning over to kiss both him and Neville on the cheek before tugging on Luna's hand. "Come on, honey. I want to introduce you to my uncle." Luna hugged them all tightly before she and Daphne left. Harry helped Ginny retrieve her trunk from the rack, and the four of them shuffled off the train together. As Harry looked around the platform, his gaze lingered on several Slytherins, all approaching family members who seemed a bit too panicked for comfort. Each of them held portkeys, just a little longer until morning. Mrs. Weasley and the twins were easy to spot, the twins clad in matching lurid purple dragonhide suits. Beside them stood Remus and Tonks, the latter sporting bright Gryffindor red and gold hair that fell to her chin. As soon as George caught sight of them, he broke away from his family, barreling over and immediately sweeping Blaise into a hug. The kiss lingered, reminiscent of a moment straight out of a Muggle romance film. Ginny made an exaggerated noise of disgust. "Caro mio, it warms my heart to see you found a man so expressive," she teased. Immediately, the two boys pulled apart. Blaise broke into a wide smile, while George turned a shade paler. "Mama," Blaise greeted, extending his hand to an incredibly beautiful woman who could only be his mother. Her skin was slightly lighter, but she shared Blaise's nose and mouth, and her green eyes sparkled almost as brightly as Harry's. "This is George. I told you about him," Blaise said. "It's nice to meet you, Lady Zabini," George croaked, offering a somewhat clumsy bow. Blaise's mother laughed, the sound like a chorus of bells. "He is charming, Blaise," she declared, patting George's hand. "You must join us in Italy for a while if you can. My son tells me you are quite the young entrepreneur." Her smile was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to Blaise's cold Slytherin facade. "Come, Caro, say goodbye to your friends. You will see them soon, I'm sure." Her gaze briefly drifted to Harry, and she nodded ever so slightly, a silent understanding passing between them. She would do whatever it took to protect Blaise, and Harry would do what he could to support her. Blaise shook Harry and Neville's hands, kissed Ginny's cheek, then shared a sweet kiss with George, murmuring something in Italian before heading off with his mother. At last, Harry made his way over to Remus and Tonks, laughing as Tonks hugged him so tightly that his feet left the ground. "Watcha, Harry," she greeted brightly, ruffling his hair. "Hi, Tonks. You're obviously feeling better," he replied, genuinely glad to see her in good spirits. Remus hugged him next, much more gently. "Hello, cub. You ready?" "One moment." Harry turned to the Weasleys, where Neville was receiving a somewhat frosty greeting from Mrs. Weasley. Harry had heard about her. An explosion of emotions erupted over Sirius and Charlie, intensified by the news of Bill's engagement. It seemed Mrs. Weasley was less than impressed with her children's choices in partners lately. Ginny shot a glare at her mother before pulling Neville into a kiss, promising him that she would write soon. Neville then turned to Harry, and the two boys shared a tight hug. "Let me know how your plans go," Neville urged, his hazel eyes meeting Harry's green ones. "If I can help, I want to." "I know," Harry replied, feeling a bit overwhelmed by the depth of Neville's loyalty. It was something he would never take for granted. After giving a little wave to the rest of the group, Neville slipped away to find his gran. Mrs. Weasley turned to Harry, kissing both his cheeks, although a slight frown still lingered on her lips. "Are you sure you don't want to come with us, Harry dear? There's plenty of room these days." Harry offered her a tight smile. "I'm good, thanks, Mrs. Weasley." Just then, Ginny and the twins bundled him into a hug all at once. He laughed as he managed to escape, reaching out to Remus just in time, for Ron and Hermione were making their way over. "Okay, Moony," he declared, beaming. "Let's go home." Chapter 75. It was a refreshing change not having to pretend to visit the Dursleys at the start of summer, but Harry didn't have the chance to fully enjoy it. He woke up early on the first morning of the holidays, excitement buzzing through his veins. They had a big day ahead, and he needed everything to go smoothly. Kerry had breakfast ready for everyone, and Harry offered a sleepy half-smile. "When's the first one due?" Remus asked. Harry glanced at his watch. 8. They had 25 minutes to get there. Remus nodded, and the two of them ate quickly. As they were leaving, Remus briefly placed a hand on Snape's shoulder, and they shared an intense look that Harry politely chose to ignore. "Ready, Cump?" Remus asked as he walked with Harry across the lawn, both shivering in the crisp morning air. Harry nodded. "Can't wait until I can do this myself," he grumbled, prompting a laugh from Remus. "It'll be sooner than you think," he promised. In an instant, Harry was squeezed tightly through a tube. When he opened his eyes, he found himself standing on the front step of the Pottery. With a grin, he opened the front door, and his smile widened at the sight of Theo Knott in the entrance hall. "Hey, Theo, settled in all right?" The tall Slytherin smiled back, relief evident in his eyes, which made Harry's heart clench. "Everything's perfect, thank you, Harry." "Glad I could help." Harry couldn't let anyone suffer that sort of fate, especially not a friend. "We should have others arriving soon. I'll be at the property line to give the secret when they get here, and then I'll send them your way, if that's all right. I assume you've met Essie and Tinker by now." Just then, the two elves appeared in the hallway, beaming at Harry. "Yeah, they're great. Essie makes a mean omelette," Theo added, watching the elf with appreciation. Harry blushed and said, "I'll have to stay for breakfast sometime," watching the elves wiggle eagerly. "You two have all the rooms and everything figured out, right?" "Yes, Master Harry," Tinker confirmed, nodding quickly. "We are ready to show Master's guests to their rooms as they arrive." "Leave it all to us, Harry," Remus assured, squeezing Harry's shoulder. "Mr. Knott and I will help with any questions and such. You just worry about getting them in here safely." Harry nodded, checked his watch again, then turned back to the front door. "Great, I'll leave you to it then." He hurried down the driveway, heading for the gates. All the portkeys were set to land there, and he needed to be ready for the first arrival. It was a bit of a convoluted plan, but it had to be for safety purposes. Snape had enchanted a collection of portkeys to random locations, where the families would find someone with their own portkey to the Pottery. If everything was safe, they would come to Harry, who would tell them the secret and send them inside. No one wanted to risk accidentally portkeying a Death Eater directly into the sanctuary house, so the multiple steps were necessary. Charlie was the first to arrive, bringing with him a family of 4. The youngest daughter wasn't even of Hogwarts age yet, while the elder was a third-year Slytherin. All 4 of them looked warily at Harry, who smiled. "No trouble?" he asked, directing the question to the redhead, who gave him a thumbs up. "All clear," Charlie promised. "I'm off to pick up my next group then." With that, he stepped back and apparated away. With Charlie's assurance that the family had no tracers, glamours, or other suspicious magic on them, Harry beckoned them forward and quietly told them the location of the Pottery. As one, they gasped. the large house suddenly revealing itself to them. "If you go inside, Remus Lupin and Theo Knott are in there with the house elves," Harry added. "They'll show you around," Harry said. Both parents flinched at the mention of Knott, and Harry tried to convey reassurance with his expression. "Theo's here for the same reason you are. I trust him." "We can trust Harry, Mum," the third-year girl, Juliet, he was sure that was her name, said firmly, tugging on her mother's robe. "Come on." With a hint of wariness, the family began to walk up the driveway. Harry felt the warmth of their magic brushing against the wards, a strange sensation that allowed him to instinctively know where everyone was on the property. He didn't have much time to ponder it, though, as Tonks appeared with the next family. This group was smaller, just a father and son, both looking utterly exhausted. "They're clear," Tonks reported. "Been hiding all night, poor sods." The father stepped forward, grasping Harry's hands with gratitude. "Thank you, Mr.
Potter," he gasped earnestly. I can never repay the kindness you've shown me and my family." "You don't have to, Mr. Whidden," Harry assured him. "Head on inside. There are people who will help you both get settled." With a wink, Tonks vanished again, leaving Harry to share the secret so the pair could find rest and nourishment. Right on schedule, Fred arrived with the next family, a lively group of 4 kids and 5 adults, all squeezed together around a length of rope. And so it continued throughout the morning, families arriving one by one. There weren't that many, really. Many neutral or dark-leaning families had set up fail-safes and escape plans since the first whispers of Voldemort's return, unwilling to find themselves in a difficult situation. But not everyone had those resources, and soon there were 8 new family groups residing at the Pottery, in addition to Theo. Harry felt a sense of relief at having saved even that many, though he knew that as time went on, the numbers would likely increase. Voldemort would soon be searching farther afield for both victims and soldiers, once his initial attempts had run their course. Once everyone had arrived safely, Harry stepped back into the house, smiling at the lively sounds echoing from within. Most of the guests were busy settling into their new rooms, while some of the earlier arrivals ventured out to explore. Harry made his way to the dining room, where the table was overflowing with food, and Remus was perched nearby, nibbling on a chocolate biscuit. "All good on this end?" Harry asked, raising an eyebrow. Just because these people sought sanctuary didn't guarantee they were all good-hearted, and he worried about how they might treat the house elves. But Essie and Tinker knew how to stand up for themselves, and Harry trusted Theo to help maintain order. "So far," Remus replied. "I think they're just glad to be out of the firing line for now. Trouble will come once they get comfortable." He grimaced slightly, and Harry mirrored the expression. "We'll handle that when it arises," Harry said, calling out, "Essie! Tinker!" Both elves appeared promptly. "Could you please ask our guest to come down here? Thank you." It took a few minutes for everyone to gather, and Harry noticed several adults casting wary glances at one another. "Okay then, welcome to the Pottery," Harry said loudly, capturing their attention. "I'm glad you all made it here safely, and I hope everything is to your liking. I'm sure Remus and Theo went over the details, but just to ensure we're all on the same page, I want to go over the rules." He made a point to look each person in the eye for at least a second, ensuring they were paying attention. They were, even the young children. They understood the gravity of their situation. First off, no fighting. I don't care what grievances you may have had with one another in the past. Everyone is here for the same reason, and that's what truly matters. Secondly, please respect both my property and my elves.
This is my ancestral home, and I'm sure you can understand how much that means to me, given my family history." Several people winced at his words. "The elves are here to assist you, but they are not your servants. They know their roles and what is expected of them. If they refuse a request, it's because they understand I won't allow it. So please, take any issues up with me, not them. We will provide 3 meals a day, and I'm sure snacks will be available if you ask nicely. As for how you spend your time, that's up to you. I'm not going to force anyone to stay on the property. It's each of your choices to do what you feel safe doing. You can write letters, and the elves will take them to the Owl Post office, but I shouldn't have to remind you to be cautious about what you include in those letters." Serious nods from many of the adults, and even more from the students. They had just survived a year with Umbridge. They knew all too well about male interception. "You obviously can't bring anyone else onto the property. If you know someone in danger who needs sanctuary, just tell one of the elves, and they'll come to me or someone I trust." Harry glanced at Remus, who gave a slight shrug. "I think that covers everything." Remus nodded, and Harry turned back to the crowd. "Just remember, we're all trying to keep each other safe here. Please help me with that." "Don't worry, Mr. Potter," one of the adults said, her sharp brown eyes focused on him. "We all understand what you're sacrificing to help us." "What about school?" Mrs. Skelby chimed in, her hands resting on her son's shoulders. "What happens when the kids go back?" "Again, I'm not going to force anyone," Harry replied. "We don't know what the situation will be like by the end of summer. If you don't feel it's safe for your children to return to Hogwarts, they are welcome to stay here with you." He couldn't promise the school would be a safe haven, and he wasn't particularly thrilled about returning himself. "Your welcome here lasts until Voldemort is dead, until it's safe for you outside these wards. Just remember not to test my hospitality," he added pointedly. "If circumstances change, we'll figure it out when we get there. I'm doing my best to provide whatever safety I can. Between us, we should be able to preserve it." Harry hoped he could trust these people in his home. They were all hiding from the same evil, and they were clever enough to avoid angering someone as powerful as he was at that moment. "I'll have friends stopping by occasionally to make sure everything is going smoothly," he added, wanting to clarify that they would have more oversight than just 2 house elves. "The prophet should be delivered daily, so you can stay informed about the outside world. Other than that, help yourselves to food and feel free to explore the house. But if you try a door and it's locked, there's a reason for that, so please don't force it." There were certain rooms that were off limits, and Harry had placed strong wards to keep them secure. At his signal, the gathered crowd cautiously approached the table, and soon everyone had filled their plates and began chatting, not joyfully, but comfortably enough. Harry sensed it would take a few days for them to fully realize they were safe there. He slipped back to the corner where Theo stood, a plate of his own in hand. "You think you can handle them?" he asked quietly, glancing around the room. Theo hummed thoughtfully. "I know most of them, at least in passing. They're not the troublemaking type," he said, "but we'll see how it goes after a few weeks in close quarters. I might have to settle a few disputes with a duel or 2, but I'll keep it non-lethal," he added with a small grin. Harry snorted. "That's all I can ask for." He paused to take a bite of his ham and cheese sandwich. "I'm sorry I can't share the secret with Susan. It's necessary people only, you know." It had been difficult enough to decide whether he could trust the Weasley boys and Tonks, but he ultimately had no choice if he wanted to ensure everyone's safety. "I understand. I can still go see her," Theo replied. "I haven't met her aunt yet, but she knows about me." Harry's cheeks coloured slightly as he grinned. "Good luck with that." The relationship between the Slytherin and the Hufflepuff still baffled him a little. Even among the heirs they were quite reserved. Yet he could see how deeply they cared for each other. It was no stranger pairing than his own with Draco, really. "Do you, know how your father is taking everything?" Harry asked hesitantly, observing the flash of pain that crossed Theo's face for a brief moment. "I haven't felt the family magic rip from my body, if that's what you mean," Theo replied dryly. "He can't disinherit me. I'm the last of both lines. He'd still rather see the magic live on in a blood traitor than let it die entirely. But beyond that, I have no idea. If I never see him again, I'll be content." Given the war ahead of them, that was a very real possibility. "Cub," Remus approached, his brows furrowed. "We should get going, unless there's more you need to do here." He glanced briefly at Theo. Harry shook his head. No, we're fine." He turned to shake Theo's hand. "I'll be in touch soon, and I'll let Susan know you're safe." "Thanks, Harry." Theo offered a brief, mischievous smile. "And thanks for giving me a room to myself." Harry laughed, winking. "Friendship privileges," he joked. After bidding farewell to the rest of the group, Harry allowed Remus to apparate him back home. That was one burden off his shoulders, at least. Meanwhile, as Harry welcomed his first guest to the pottery, Draco was jolted awake unexpectedly. Considering the type of people currently in his house, he sprang upright immediately, wand in hand. But familiar fingers brushed over his forehead, and his bleary gaze met his mother's keen grey eyes. His heart stopped. "Mum, what's wrong?" he asked, anxiety creeping in. Was it the Dark Lord? Were they in trouble? Narcissa's gaze softened as she leaned in to kiss his forehead. Get dressed, darling, quickly now. The others will be up soon." Draco's heart raced, confusion swirling in his still sleepy mind. He hurried to obey, not asking questions until he was shoving his feet into his boots. "Do we need to run?" He had already begun mentally packing, prioritizing what he could grab in the limited time they might have. A cold, vindictive smile crept across his mother's regal face. "Draco, darling, this is our home. We will never run from this place." She extended her hand, and he took it. Silently they crept through the halls. Draco wasn't sure where she was leading him. He still had no idea what was happening, to be honest. But he followed her down the stairs and through the dining room until they stood in front of a bookshelf. To his astonishment, she reached out and tapped a book with her finger, causing the shelf to swing open. The room it revealed was small, but stepping inside, Draco quickly realized why they were there. On a pedestal before him sat a large, smooth crystal, swirling as if it contained mercury. The Malfoy Wardstone. For some reason, Draco had always expected the Wardstone to be hidden away in a more grandiose setting. He had searched for it in his youth, determined to uncover all the family secrets. His father had told him he would only learn of it when it was time for him to become Lord of the Manor. That time was now, Draco supposed. "Mother, what are we doing here?" he asked as she shut the door behind them, both of them squeezed into the small room. The magic radiating from the Wardstone was palpable, tugging at Draco's core like thick treacle. "We are here to reclaim what is ours," Narcissa replied primly, rolling up her sleeves. "Your father invited that filth into the manor. But he is gone now, and we no longer need to tolerate his guests or his influence." Draco's eyes widened in shock. "Are you sure?" Draco asked, his voice trembling. Everything they did now would send a message. It would show the Dark Lord that the Malfoys were no longer under his control. "What about your mark?" He recalled Severus mentioning that the Dark Lord had ways of reaching him through his mark, manipulating his magic to bring him to heel. "Quite certain," Narcissa assured him. "My mark is not like Severus. He is valuable enough for the Dark Lord to maintain a close connection. I am just a wife," she said with a smirk. "He didn't think I was worth the effort of controlling, and that will be his mistake." Her expression softened as she reached out to squeeze Draco's hand. "We made our choices long ago, little dragon. I made mine the moment I saw you look at Harry Potter as if he were the greatest treasure in the universe." Draco felt a blush creeping to his cheeks. "While Lucius was around, we had a role to play, but that is in the past now. I am Lady Malfoy, head of the family until you come of age, and I refuse to cower in my own manner. Between the two of us, I believe we have enough power to secure the wards and eject our unwanted visitors." The casual way she spoke about throwing the Dark Lord out of their house left Draco speechless. "Is that possible?" he stammered. He was underage, and his mother was only a Malfoy by marriage. "This manor has war wards, and it's understood that war doesn't always wait for the head of the family to come of age," Narcissa explained. "I have faith that this will work, and if it doesn't, we have other options." Draco wondered if he should have packed a bag after all, but it was too late for that now. Squaring his jaw with determination, he nodded, and together they turned to the wardstone. "Let me do the asking," Narcissa instructed quietly. "You just put the power into it." They placed their hands on the wardstone in unison, and Draco gasped softly as he felt the wards surge through him. Echoes of centuries of Malfoy's past intertwined with his own magic, assessing his worth. Draco pushed forward everything he had, his strength, his power, even his love for Harry, anything that might help his mother secure their home. He aimed to prove to the wards that those within were unworthy of the sanctuary that Malfoy magic provided. For several long minutes nothing happened. Then, slowly, he felt it, a rush in his blood and a vibration in the stones beneath his feet. His heartbeat synchronized with his mother's, with the wardstone, as all their magic combined, flooding through the house and extending all the way to the boundary line. It felt solid, like a shield enveloping the entire property, but the magic felt expectant. It required more than just his magic to maintain such powerful wards. Instinctively, Draco drew his wand, keeping one hand on the wardstone. With a swift spell, he cut open his palm from the base of his thumb to the curve of his wrist. The wardstone flashed bright white as his blood met its warm surface. The wards pulsed with renewed strength and then released him. He and his mother stood there, breathing heavily, Draco's hand still dripping blood onto the floor. "Well done, darling," Narcissa murmured, carefully healing his wound. "I think we did it." Draco could see the tremble in her arm as she reached for the door. If they hadn't succeeded, they would soon be dead. But it seemed their gamble had paid off. As they walked through the dining room, everything was silent. In the hallway, Narcissa cleared her throat. "Dippy," she called, and a house elf appeared. "Have our visitors gone?" Watching the elf nod made Draco's shoulders sag in relief. "Missy Sissa and Master Draco is the only peoples in the house, miss," Dippy confirmed. A satisfied smile spread across Lady Malfoy's face. "Wonderful. Clean up any rooms that were previously occupied, would you? I want no trace of them left. Put their belongings in the Lord's office. I'll deal with them later." The elf vanished, and only then did Narcissa relax. "They're going to kill you," Draco said fearfully, reaching for her hand. "The moment you step foot outside, they'll kill you." Far from alarmed, she smirked wider. "Have a little faith, darling. I know how to play this game." She lifted his hand to her lips, kissing his knuckles. "This has been long overdue, but it's a start. There is much more work to be done." She met his gaze unflinchingly. "Your Harry is making good progress, but there are certain moves that can only be made by someone with a bit more experience in these matters, and we will aid him however we can. He is family, after all." Draco's heart squeezed painfully, filled with love for this woman and in awe of her strength. "Thank you," he rasped, and her eyes softened with affection. "Do not thank me, my darling. I'm only doing what a mother should, and quite frankly, it's about time the name Malfoy had someone truly worthy to uphold it. Really, with the amount of influence your father held, it's quite ridiculous how little he actually accomplished with it." That devious smirk returned. His loss. Draco blinked at her, uncertain if he wanted to know what else his mother was planning. Sirius was right. Black women were terrifying. Serendu was empty when Harry and Remus returned. Kerry reported that Snape had been summoned to a Death Eater meeting not more than half an hour ago. Remus cursed quietly and Harry squeezed his shoulder. "Come on, let's work on my schedule for the summer. Snape can go over it with us when he gets back." Eager for the distraction, Remus agreed, and soon the two of them were settled in the living room with tea and scones, a piece of parchment spread out on the table between them. "We're adding apparition lessons," Remus said, writing that at the top of the page. Harry brightened. "Really? Shouldn't take too long. I imagine you'll get the hang of it quite quickly. You certainly seem to with everything else," Remus said, causing Harry to blush. Dueling was, of course, added to the list, though Remus admitted that it would mostly depend on when others were around to help. "After watching you at the Ministry, it's clear you can hold your own. We just need to make sure you're ready to face him and his minions." The werewolf's eyes crinkled as he smiled proudly. "You really were marvelous, you know. Your friends too, of course, but seeing how well you fought against Malfoy, the Lestranges and those Death Eaters who have brought down experienced Aurors, you're remarkable, Harry." Harry's cheeks burned hot and he ducked his head. "Only because of what you've all taught me," he insisted. "Teaching conditions can only go so far in preparation for the real thing," Remus retorted. "Be proud of yourself, Harry. You're doing incredible things for your age." Harry cleared his throat awkwardly. "So, what else do we need to work on this summer?" He couldn't just sit there and let Remus compliment him. Besides, there had to be plenty more for him to learn. "Honestly, a lot of it will just depend on how the summer plays out. Between the pottery and everything else, you may be busier than usual." Everything else was a very broad way of referring to the absolute chaos that was the Ministry at that moment. There was no sign of a new minister yet, and everyone was reeling from the shocking discovery of how many influential Ministry employees were actually Death Eaters, now either dead or in Azkaban thanks to Harry and his friends. The whole situation was a mess, and it infuriated Harry to see known Dumbledore sycophants trying to fill the gaps, praising the headmaster for repelling Voldemort's attack, as if he had been useful for more than just a few minutes. "You say that, but everything else will just have me sitting here waiting for the rest of you to get home," Harry pointed out stubbornly. Harry knew it made sense, but that didn't mean he liked being kept out of the fight after training so hard for it. Remus sighed. "Considering you're still underage, yes, it will. I don't know who the new minister will be, but if it's another Fudge, you'll have to be even more careful than before," he warned, making Harry scowl. "So what else can I do this summer?" Harry asked, eager to avoid the frustration of another incompetent minister. "You can rest," Remus replied immediately. "Harry, you've had a tough year. You need to take some time to relax and recover while you're safe." "Voldemort isn't relaxing," Harry snapped. Perhaps not, but he certainly isn't trying to do everything himself, Remus retorted without missing a beat. He's got his minions for that. There was a pause, then Harry snorted. Are you saying you lot are my minions? Remus's lips twitched with amusement. I'm saying you need to give yourself a break. But honestly, minions isn't far off, he teased, and Harry shot him a half-hearted scowl. It wasn't that he didn't want to relax. He did, desperately, after Umbridge, the Owls, and the battle at the Ministry. But he couldn't shake the feeling that if he let himself rest for even 10 minutes, the whole world would fall apart. Summer is the only time I can actually learn useful things without having to sneak around, Moony, he insisted. I need to take advantage of it while I can. Oh, it's that time of year again, is it? The voice had Harry scrambling out of his chair, beaming at the dark-haired figure in the doorway. Sirius! He exclaimed, hurrying forward to wrap his godfather in a tight hug. Sirius had been at Grimmauld since Harry had left school. He hugged Harry back, kissing his hair. Good to see you, pup. When Harry stepped back, Harry spotted a shock of red hair just past Sirius's shoulder. Hi, Charlie, he greeted. Hey, kid, Charlie replied with a grin. He then turned to Sirius, raising his eyebrows. That time of year? Sirius nodded. The time of year when Moony and I have to convince Harry here that he can't spend the entire summer turning himself into a dueling machine. He ruffled Harry's hair pointedly. We aren't letting Dumbledore turn you into a weapon, and we're not letting you do that to yourself either. Take breaks, do fun things, get some sleep. Merlin knows you haven't had enough this past year with all your after-curfew adventures, he added, rolling his eyes. Harry sighed, allowing himself to be herded back to the sofa. I slept, he defended, though his voice sounded weak. Admittedly, his sleep schedule had not been great lately. Things are getting worse out there. I need to be ready. Remus interjected. We both know that your preparedness isn't what's holding us back. These things take time, Harry. Time you can't control. It's better for you to pace yourself while we wait than to burn out before you get there. Harry huffed. I hate it when you're reasonable, he muttered, which made Sirius snicker. Moony's always reasonable, Sirius teased. He and Charlie settled comfortably on the opposite sofa, and Harry eyed them with curiosity. It felt strange having Charlie around like this. Every other time Harry had interacted with him, it was as the second oldest Weasley brother. Now, without any other Weasleys around, he was clearly here as Sirius's boyfriend. Charlie had an arm around Sirius's shoulders, and Harry noticed that he looked a bit bewildered too. Is this Charlie's first visit here? Harry asked. Sirius nodded. Harry smirked, unable to help himself. So he's family now, is he? He drawled. He knows what this place means? Confusion spread across Sirius's face as he blushed brightly. He's got the gist of it, Sirius insisted. He also knows he has full permission to hex you if you're being a little git, he added with a playful growl. Harry's green eyes widened, appearing innocent. Me? Never. Even he couldn't maintain that straight face for long. I grew up with Fred and George. You know I won't hold back, Charlie joked, winking at him. But don't worry. If Harry starts teasing me about you, I'll just share all the gory details of how we got together. His eyebrows wiggled suggestively, and Harry made a face. Gross. Sirius was blushing again, and Harry marvelled at the sight. His godfather hardly ever blushed before now. Merlin, he was smitten. Well, the more the merrier, as far as I'm concerned. Even better if it means Sirius doesn't have to pretend to live at Grimmauld any more. You having this place does explain a lot, Charlie agreed. I know it's a big deal for me to know where it is and everything. So, thanks. His expression melted into a sappy grin as he looked at Sirius, who beamed back and kissed him quickly. Ugh, are they always like this? Harry joked, glancing at Remus. Like you can talk, Sirius retorted pointedly. Don't be jealous because your boyfriend isn't moving in yet. Harry shot him a glare, while Charlie's blue eyes sharpened with interest. Boyfriend? Tell me more, he drawled lightly. Sirius smirked and declared dramatically, Our Harry is in love with a snake. He exaggerated his gasp and widened his eyes for effect. Charlie shook his head mock-sympathetically, patting Sirius's thigh. It's okay, he assured. There's one in every family. You just have to learn to accept it. Harry snickered. I'm telling George you said that, he joked, but now that you're uncovering all the family secrets, I should tell you that I've been dating Draco Malfoy since 4th year, Harry said. Charlie's eyebrows shot up in genuine surprise. Really? Even after... He waved his hand vaguely, and it took Harry a moment to understand what he meant. His stomach squirmed uncomfortably. After what happened with his dad? When I accidentally killed him, he thought, though none of them said it aloud. He didn't get along with Lucius. Neither did his mum. We're still good. They're worse than good. They're disgustingly adorable, Sirius grumbled. And speaking of snakes in the family, where's... He trailed off, glancing expectantly at Remus. The humour melted from Remus's face. Death Eater meeting, he replied, and Sirius cursed quietly. How long has he been gone? Sirius asked. Remus checked his watch. A little over 2 hours now. He ran a weary hand through his hair. If we're lucky, he'll be home for dinner, not that he'll be in any mood to eat. Who are we talking about now? Charlie interjected, looking confused. Harry bit his lip to keep from smirking. You didn't tell him that family secret yet either, he asked Sirius, raising an eyebrow. That was definitely the kind of secret that warranted a warning. Sirius flushed. I was going to, but there was never a good time, he muttered. He turned back to Charlie, trepidation flickering in his eyes. So, someone else lives here. Mooney's partner. I didn't know you were seeing anyone, Remus, Charlie said, pausing and frowning. And he's a Death Eater? A spy, Remus replied, a small smile creeping onto his lips as he enjoyed the suspense. You know him, actually. Harry watched as the pieces slowly came together in Charlie's mind, his eyes going comically wide. You don't mean Snape, do you? There was a hint of nervousness in his voice. Remus smiled wider. Charlie's eyes widened and he nodded slowly. Oh. His voice came out a bit strained. He's not as bad as you think he is, Harry said, trying to be supportive. I mean, well, he is, but he's not a totally different person when he's in private. Remus let out a quiet snort in response. But it's less mean and more funny, sort of. Harry struggled to find the right words to explain Severus Snape. I thought the two of you hated each other, Charlie asked Sirius, who simply shrugged. Oh, we absolutely did. But Mooney stopped caring about that around the time we graduated school, so we learned to get along. Eventually. For the most part. Sirius suddenly froze, his head cocked slightly. Speak of the devil. Remus jumped to his feet. He's back? Sirius nodded, and in an instant the werewolf was gone. Well, we won't see those two for a few hours, Sirius mused, giving Charlie's knee a reassuring squeeze. Don't worry, love. Severus really isn't terrible to live with. You'll get used to him. He turned to Harry. "What are you up to for the rest of the evening, pup?" "I should probably finish unpacking," Harry admitted with a shrug. He had been too tired to bother after dinner with Remus and Tonks the night before, and hadn't had time that morning. "Solid plan. I'm going to give Charlie the tour of the place." Sirius got to his feet, tugging Charlie up by the hand. "See you at dinner, kiddo." Harry watched them go, feeling a bit bemused. There was a spring in Sirius's step that he had never seen before, a light in his eyes that he only recognized from old pictures of him before Azkaban. If Charlie was the one bringing that out, then Harry was glad he was around. But that wouldn't stop him from teasing the pair of them as much as possible. Later that night, Harry was in bed early. Remus and Snape had missed dinner, and Sirius and Charlie were clearly enjoying each other's company. Harry didn't want to dwell on it too much. He had already endured a long day and felt utterly exhausted. Yet the moment his head hit the pillow, all weariness vanished. He found himself in a stone room, torches casting long shadows across a small crowd gathered before him. Sitting on his throne, he sneered down at the man kneeling at his feet.
"You are certain of the address, Rookwood?" he asked, his voice cold and measured. The man nodded. "Yes, my lord. It is Amelia Bones's flat, for certain. I imperioused the flue guard for that area. Her entry wards should be down." "Should?" Harry hissed, his fingers tightening around his wand. Will be down, my lord," Rookwood quickly corrected. Satisfaction bloomed in Harry's chest, but he cast a Cruciatus curse anyway. Rookwood needed to learn to deal in certainties when addressing Lord Voldemort. "Then we strike tonight," he declared. "I will handle this one myself." Rage burned within him. That insolent blood traitor will regret attempting to stand up to Lord Voldemort. Cheers erupted from the small crowd, and Harry rose to his feet, eager for bloodshed. Yes, Amelia Bones would soon learn that those who supported the Potter brat would get exactly what they deserved. Suddenly Harry awoke with a gasp, a chill crawling over him from the experience of being inside Voldemort's mind. Panic gripped his heart, and he instinctively reached for his wand. "Expecto Patronum!" he shouted. The room filled with an eerie silver glow as prongs burst forth from his wand. "Go to Amelia Bones. Tell her he's coming for her. Her wards are down. Run, now!" Prongs took off immediately, embodying the urgency in Harry's voice. Harry checked the clock. It was almost midnight. He hoped Amelia wouldn't sleep through his warning. With a surge of adrenaline, he launched himself out of bed. There was no way he would be able to sleep after that. He began pacing his room, replaying every second of the vision in his mind, searching for anything he might have missed. Was the strike by Voldemort imminent? Harry wondered if they were only targeting the Bones family, or if others were in danger too. Did he mean he was taking backup with him? Just then a knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. He turned to see Sirius nudging it open, wearing a dressing gown and looking concerned through his sleep-hazed eyes. "Kerry said you had a nightmare," Sirius said. "Vision," Harry corrected, noting the alarm in Sirius's expression. "He's going after Amelia Bones. I sent her a Patronus, but—" His stomach twisted with anxiety. What if his warning hadn't reached her? What if he was too late? Sirius swore softly, rushing forward to wrap Harry in a hug. "You did what you could, pup." "He's going himself, Sirius," Harry said, his voice cracking. "Susan's a great fighter, and I'm sure her aunt is too, but against Voldemort himself? Those aren't good odds." Sirius held him tighter, smoothing down his hair. "Don't write them off yet," he insisted soothingly. "Come on, let's get you a drink, yeah?"
Suddenly, Harry felt heat rise in his cheeks, a wave of embarrassment washing over him.
"You don't need to stay up with me, Padfoot," he muttered. "I'll be fine. Go back to bed. Charlie will be worried." Sirius rolled his eyes. "Charlie knows where I am. I told him to go back to sleep," he replied. "I'm not leaving you alone after what you just experienced, not until we know the Bones are okay." He pulled back slightly, but one long arm remained around Harry's shoulders, guiding him toward the door. "You're still my first priority, pup. Charlie doesn't change that. Heck, he'd leave me in a heartbeat if he thought I was putting him before you," he added with a flicker of a smile. "I know we haven't really talked about what it means, me and him, not in relation to us. And right now isn't the best time for it. But you're still my kid, yeah? So let me take care of you." Harry felt a rush of gratitude at those words. Harry fought back tears, his heart aching as Sirius's grey eyes locked onto him. "You silly bugger," Sirius sighed, planting a gentle kiss on Harry's forehead. "You didn't think I'd stop being an overbearing fusspot just because I have a hot redhead waiting for me, did you?" Harry made a noise that was part laugh, part groan, wet with tears, and it made Sirius grin. "You're at the top of the list, kiddo, for me and Mooney both. The only reason he's not up here with us is that I told Kerry not to wake him. It sounded like Snape had a rough meeting. But I can get both of them if you want." No, it's fine," Harry insisted, wiping his cheeks. "Like you said, there's nothing we can do. Should we get a message to Kingsley? Amelia might need backup." Before Sirius could respond, the corridor was filled with a soft, pale light. A silver badger bounded toward them, stopping in front of Harry and raising its head. "We are safe," it said in Amelia's voice. "It was a close call. A letter will follow shortly. Thank you, Harry." Then it dissolved, and with it went the tension in Harry's shoulders. "Thank Merlin," Sirius breathed. That's good to hear." Harry nodded vigorously. "Let's go put some tea on. I know neither of us is going to be able to relax until that letter arrives." As they made their way to the stairs, the door to Sirius's room creaked open, and Charlie peeked out. "Everything all right?" he asked, shirtless and holding his wand, clearly ready for anything. "We're fine, love," Sirius reassured him. "Just waiting on a letter. Going downstairs for a bit." He stepped away from Harry and cupped Charlie's cheek. "Go back to sleep. You've got work in the morning." Charlie leaned into the touch, his eyes fluttering half shut. "You sure? Don't need to muster the cavalry?" A fond chuckle escaped Sirius's lips. "No, not this time." "It's necessary," Sirius assured, pressing a gentle kiss to Charlie's lips. "Go to bed." "It won't do you any good to be half asleep when that new Welsh green arrives." Charlie needed no further persuasion, and Sirius shut the door behind him, turning back to Harry. In the dim light, Harry noticed a faint blush on Sirius's cheeks, realizing they had an audience for the entire exchange. "You really care about him, don't you?" Harry asked quietly as he continued toward the stairs. "More than I thought possible, after everything," Sirius admitted in a whisper. "He's far too good for me, but he made it very clear he's made up his mind, and at this point I'm too deep to let him go." Harry nudged their shoulders together gently, a smile breaking across his face. "I'm happy for you, Padfoot," he said earnestly. "You know, you promised you'd tell me the full story. I think we could both use the distraction right now." "All right then, you nosy sod," Sirius teased. When they reached the kitchen, 2 cups of steaming peppermint tea were already waiting at the table, though Kerry was nowhere to be seen. "Sit down. I'll start from the beginning," Sirius said,
And he did. He told Harry all about Charlie's harmless flirting, which had gradually become less innocent over time. They had both fallen for each other, despite Sirius's initial determination not to. To Harry's relief, his godfather skimmed over the more intimate details, but it warmed his heart to hear how insistent Charlie was that Sirius deserved love in his life. Harry knew he liked Charlie Weasley for a reason. So captivated by the story, Harry almost forgot what they had been waiting for, until the window suddenly swung open and a small brown owl he recognized as Susan's swooped into the kitchen, dropping a letter onto the table in front of him. Harry reached for it, tearing it open. "Harry, you saved our lives. Your Patronus arrived just a minute before the ward alarm went off. Enough time." Amelia went to grab some essentials and summon the emergency port key. You-know-who showed up, but thankfully he was too late. "We're with the Longbottoms now. Neville's Gran has offered us a place for the summer. Their wards are the strongest we know that aren't under a Fidelius or anything complicated. Aunt Amelia isn't going to let this push her out of the public eye, although the flat is probably a mess. We'll go back and check it tomorrow with some auras. I don't know what kind of vision you had, but thank you. If you hadn't warned us, Aunt Amelia would have insisted on staying behind to fight so I could escape. I can't lose her, Harry. She's all I've got left. Talk soon, Susan." Harry let the tension drain from him as he read the letter several times, needing the reassurance that everyone was okay. "That's all right then," Sirius said, leaning in to read over Harry's shoulder. "Augusta won't let them come to any harm. Terrifying woman she is." Harry snorted. That was certainly one way to describe Neville's grandmother. "That was far too close," he breathed, and Sirius gently squeezed the back of his neck. "Always is, but it's close enough. They're safe." The two fell silent for a few moments, their eyes still fixed on the letter. "Want to stay up longer, or are you good to go back to sleep?" Harry asked, glancing at the clock on the wall. It was almost 4 in the morning now, and his exhaustion had returned with a vengeance as the adrenaline faded. "Sleep sounds good," he agreed, noticing that Sirius looked like he could use some rest as well. So much for a nice, relaxing start to the summer. Chapter 76. No one seemed particularly energetic at breakfast. Sirius had obviously shared Harry's vision with the rest of the household, as conversations quieted the moment Harry walked in. "Morning," Harry greeted wearily. Remus immediately stood, opening his arms for a hug. "Are you all right, cub?" "Fine, now. I might go for a swim later. I'm a bit sore." "Cruciatus?" Snape asked, and Harry nodded. "On Rookwood. But just the once, so I didn't take a potion. I thought he was one of the ones we caught." "You did. He claimed to be a ministry spy and got himself released," Snape replied with a sneer. Harry scowled. "Spy my arse," he muttered, sinking into his usual seat at the table. Opposite him, Charlie blinked, clearly still adjusting to the whole Snape situation. "Anything useful happen at your meeting?" Charlie asked. "Nothing alarming," Snape replied, sipping his coffee. Kerry floated a plate of pancakes in front of Harry, and he offered her a brief smile. It seems Narcissa grew tired of hosting. She put the manor on lockdown, ejecting everyone except herself and Draco. As you can imagine, the Dark Lord is not pleased. Bellatrix suffered most severely for not noticing her sister's disloyalty. Harry's eyes went wide, though he couldn't bring himself to feel sympathy for Bellatrix being punished. "Narcissa can do that? And it'll keep them all out?" "It appears so. Likely she had Draco assist her. He is the new lord of the manor, after all, even though he is a year shy of majority." "That's my go," Sirius cheered, grinning. "Turn them all out on their asses." It was a relief to know that Draco no longer had Voldemort in his house, but such a bold move made Harry uneasy. He won't take it lightly. "That lying down," he murmured grimly. Snape's dark eyes met his, surprisingly confident. "Trust that Narcissa has been planning her actions for a long time now. She will not take unnecessary risks." Harry hoped he was right.
"Cheer up, pup," Sirius crowed. "If it gets dire, they'll just move in here. Old Snakeface would never find them then." He winked playfully. "You'll get your boyfriend back earlier than you thought." Rolling his eyes, Harry threw a blueberry at him. Sure, it would be nice to have Draco around, but not at the cost of Voldemort wanting him dead. "I suppose no one's going to duel with me today, then," he sighed, reaching for the jug of orange juice, "since you all seem to think I need rest or something." As if to reinforce the point, a huge yawn escaped him, and Remus snorted. "Shut up, Moony," Harry grumbled weakly. "You're taking it easy today, kid. We've got an order meeting back at Grimmauld this evening anyway." Harry smirked at Sirius's words. "You're leaving me behind for that, huh? Dumbledore wants to talk to me. He was trying to reach me at school, but I dodged him. Before I got on the train home, he said he'd see me at headquarters." "Then you're definitely not going," Sirius agreed. "On that note, I've got dragons to see," Charlie declared, pushing back from the table. As he stood, he ducked to kiss Sirius's cheek. "I'll see you all at the meeting, and you after, I suppose," he added, glancing at Harry. His gaze swept the table, pausing awkwardly on Snape, who stared back impassively. Then Charlie coughed and headed for the door. "Have fun," Sirius called after him. When they heard the front door shut, Remus elbowed Snape gently. "You could at least try to be less intimidating." "Why bother?" Snape drawled in reply. Harry ducked his head, feeling the tension in the room shift. Sirius tried to hide his smile behind a mouthful of pancakes. It felt good to be home. He was the first to arrive at Grimmauld Place ahead of the order meeting. Remus was already there, engrossed in a book, and promised to join him shortly. Sirius half expected to find Molly Weasley bustling around his kitchen, but he remembered with a grin that he had banned her from the wards. His thoughts drifted back to the events of that morning, specifically what had happened after Molly had left, until he was jolted back to reality by the sound of apparition in the hallway. "It's only me," Tonks called cheerfully as she appeared in the kitchen doorway. She seemed to revel in being as loud as possible now that there was no painting of Walburga Black to scold her. "Blimey, am I that early?" "Looks like," Sirius replied, chuckling as she headed straight for the pantry and returned with a bottle of butterbeer and a small pork pie. "Skipped lunch?" he asked. "Had to," she said, a scowl on her face. "The Ministry's a bloody disaster. We've got too many Death Eaters to process. They're trying to delay Pettigrew's interrogation, as if we might just forget and leave you on the run or something." Sirius scowled back at her. "Fucking auras. Tell me about it." Their conversation was interrupted by the fire flaring green, and Bill Weasley stepped out, closely followed by Fleur Delacour. She was a recent addition to the Order, but Sirius already liked her. She shared Harry's views and held them in higher regard than Dumbledore's. One after another, the members of the Order of the Phoenix filled the kitchen. Charlie slipped in behind Mundungus Fletcher, and Sirius waved him over, saving a seat beside him. It earned some curious looks, especially when Charlie kissed him on the cheek, but Sirius didn't care. Everyone he cared about knew about their relationship. They weren't hiding it anymore. Only after the...
The room was full when Albus Dumbledore arrived through the fire, and the quiet whispers stopped immediately, as if they were a group of naughty schoolchildren caught in the act. "Good, you're all here," he greeted them, though his expression turned slightly serious.
"Sirius, must you continue to hold this grudge against Molly? She should be able to attend meetings at the very least." "Not until she learns to respect me in my own damn house, Albus," Sirius replied evenly. Dumbledore frowned in disappointment, but chose not to pursue the matter further. He launched into an update on the ministry proceedings, announcing that a new minister would be chosen by the end of the week. "It is a relief that Lucius Malfoy is not there to throw his own hat in the ring, but that does not mean Voldemort's men are absent from the process. I am trying to guide it as best I can." Sirius suppressed a scowl. He suspected Dumbledore would be steering things toward whichever puppet he could manipulate most easily. The only good news in the headmaster's report was the confirmation that Dolores Umbridge was heading to Azkaban for her crimes against the students of Hogwarts. "Good riddance," Moody snarled, and for once Sirius found himself in agreement. "Quite," Dumbledore said. "Though it does leave me once again in search of a new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher." "Do you have anyone in mind?" Hestia Jones asked. An infuriating smile crossed Dumbledore's lips. "I believe I have an idea," he assured them. "I merely need to make some inquiries." As he continued droning on, Sirius felt his patience wearing thin. Finally, he interjected. "I'm surprised you haven't mentioned anything about the attack on Amelia Bones, Albus." Several people gasped in shock. "Attack? What attack?" Arthur Weasley asked, his eyes wide. "Voldemort himself decided to go after her," Sirius revealed. "Last night. Luckily, Harry had a vision, and we managed to get the word out just in time." "Amelia and Susan are both fine," Kingsley said, a look of approval in his eyes. "Amelia mentioned she got an early warning. She said she was damned lucky for it, too. If it had been much later, things could have been disastrous." Several people around the table exchanged uneasy glances. A ministry without Amelia Bones would be significantly weaker. "Harry is still having visions, then?" Dumbledore inquired, his blue eyes filled with curiosity. Sirius felt a faint pressure on his occlumency shields and scowled. "He is. Not every night, but far more often than I'd like," he replied. "I'll be honest, I quite expected to find him down here," Dumbledore continued. "Last summer I understand he was insistent on being involved with the Order. I can't imagine that has changed after the events of last month. I'd like to speak to him after the meeting, actually." "You can't. I left him at home," Sirius said blandly. Dumbledore froze. "He is not living here?" "What do you mean, home?" Hestia Jones interjected. "He's not back with those awful muggles, is he?" Arthur asked, alarm creeping into his voice. "Of course not," Sirius protested, offended that anyone would think he had left Harry with them. "He's at home." "Our home. The safest place he could possibly be." "Sirius." Dumbledore's disapproving frown returned. "I must insist you bring him here at once. Voldemort will be looking for him, and it's imperative that Harry be safe." "He is safe," Sirius reiterated. "Much safer with only a small handful of people knowing where he is. Forgive me, Albus, but after everything that happened last summer, I'm not going to let you just toss Harry around wherever is most convenient for you. He's at home, and he'll be staying there all summer." "Do you mean you're not living here either, Black?" Moody barked. "You're supposed to be our point of contact, keeping headquarters protected." "Which only proves my point exactly. If I need being here at all times to protect this place,
I wouldn't consider that safe, would you? Sirius shot back. As long as the Fidelius charm holds, it'll be secure for meetings.
But there are far too many people coming and going for me to be sure Harry will be all right. And quite frankly, it's none of your business where I house my godson. You are not his legal guardian, Sirius, Dumbledore reminded him. Not yet, but I will be as soon as I'm free. Sirius couldn't help but wonder how much of the delay regarding Pettigrew was Dumbledore's doing, trying to keep him from reclaiming his rightful place in society. I need to speak with Harry, Dumbledore insisted again. Sirius stared him down coolly. I'll let him know, and if he wants to meet with you, we can arrange something. Until then, I thought the whole point of the order was that Harry doesn't need to be involved. Last year, you all kept saying he was too young and needed protection. Now you're angry at me for doing exactly that. If you show me this home of yours, so I can see those protections for myself— No, Sirius interrupted bluntly. I'm allowing you the use of my family house for the order, Albus, but you have no right to my private home. Across the table, he caught the warning look in Remus's eyes. They didn't want to reveal their hand too early. But there was no way Sirius was letting Dumbledore anywhere near Seren Du. Harry is fine where he is, Albus, Remus said calmly. I can attest to that myself. Perhaps we should get back to the matter at hand. Is there anything we can do to help secure the Ministry? Kingsley seized the topic and launched into his report about the traitors within the Aura Department and the current situation at the Muggle Prime Minister's office where he was stationed. Sirius leaned back in his chair, his knee pressed against Charlie's under the table. Sirius glanced up from the table, catching Dumbledore still frowning at him. He fought back a smirk. More members of the Order were aligned with Harry than with Dumbledore at this point, and the headmaster would do well to watch his step. "What?" Harry exclaimed, his outraged yelp startling Remus, causing him to spill his tea, while Charlie's egg slipped off his fork. "What's the matter?" the redhead asked, concern evident in his voice. Harry scowled and turned the front page of the morning paper for everyone to see. The headline read, "Rufus Scrimgeour, named Minister for Magic." "Oh, for heaven's sake," Sirius groaned, shaking his head. "They chose that prick." "Who is he?" Charlie inquired. "He was the head Aura," Snape drawled, his tone distinctly unimpressed. "He's cut from the same cloth as Alastair Moody, a traditional approach to eradicating dark magic." Harry scanned the article quickly, noting the numerous references to Scrimgeour being the firm hand the country needed in these dangerous times. So he'll curse first and ask questions later, basically. And anything worse than a tickling charm will have him calling someone a Death Eater, Remus agreed, frowning. I get that people are looking for someone more proactive after Fudge, but honestly, given how corrupt the Aura office is already, making its head in charge of the entire ministry hardly seems wise. That would require them to admit the Aura office is corrupt, Snape pointed out. "What's all this about Scrimgeour having a rift with Dumbledore?" Harry asked, gesturing back at the paper. Sirius snorted. "Oh, that's a load of codswallop. Scrimgeour's too prideful to bow to Dumbledore's whims. He pretends they hate each other, but ends up sucking up every scrap of advice Dumbledore gives him anyway. Mentioning there's bad blood between them is probably just to placate all those people who have decided they hate Dumbledore because—" "The Prophet has spent the last year telling them to hate Dumbledore," Charlie agreed. "They're just covering their own backs." Harry found himself conflicted. While he understood the disdain for Dumbledore, this Rufus Scrimgeour didn't seem any better. "I thought for sure Amelia would get the position," he sighed. Remus placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "She's the most qualified for it," he said, "but she's far too progressive and competent. There's a reason Voldemort tried to kill her himself.
With both him and Dumbledore meddling, there was no way she'd get the job. Remus was right, but that didn't make the news any easier to digest. Susan was going to be furious. "We'll just have to make sure Amelia makes it through the war, so we can have a proper vote," he muttered to himself. "That's the spirit, pup," Sirius chimed in enthusiastically. He waved a letter in his hand, a broad grin on his face. "It's from Amelia. My trial is set for 3 days from now, the first Wizengamot meeting of the summer." Harry's head snapped up, a beaming smile spreading across his face. Soon Sirius would be free. With the trial approaching, a sense of urgency enveloped the house. Sirius could hardly sit still, bouncing between exuberant joy over his impending freedom and intense melancholy at the thought of Dumbledore interfering and getting him locked up again. The rest of the group did their best to lift his spirits, but Charlie seemed to have the most success. Meanwhile, Harry was writing furiously back and forth with Susan and her aunt, ensuring their case for the trial was as airtight as possible. Anything to keep his mind off Draco. He hadn't heard anything from the Malfoys since Snape had mentioned that Narcissa had locked down the manor. Any letters sent with Hedwig came back unanswered, and Harry hadn't had the chance to. Harry had given Draco the other mirror before they left school. The uncertainty gnawed at his gut, filling his mind with all sorts of dreadful scenarios whenever he took a moment to breathe. He kept telling himself that if they were dead, it would have been in the papers, but it wasn't as reassuring as he'd hoped. With Sirius so stressed about his upcoming trial, Harry didn't want to add to anyone's burdens. So, when the worry became overwhelming, he grabbed his firebolt and headed outside. It felt glorious to be back in the air. Umbridge might have banned him from Quidditch for a couple of months, but he had missed flying intensely. He let his practice snitch go, zooming around the half-pitch while it fluttered nearby. But even flying couldn't completely dispel the anxiety bubbling in his gut, that nagging voice in the back of his mind, insisting that Draco was in danger. He turned, intending to dive for the snitch, only to come up short at the sight of a redhead zooming toward it. Charlie plucked the snitch from the air and offered Harry a gentle smile, though worry lingered in his eyes. "Best 2 out of 3? Charlie suggested lightly. "That one doesn't count," Harry insisted, and Charlie laughed. "Yeah, okay, fair enough." Charlie released the snitch, and they circled for a count of 15 before shooting off. The distraction of playing against another person made it easier to focus. By the time they had played 5 rounds, 4 of which had gone to Harry, he found a smile creeping onto his face. "Feel better?" Charlie asked, drifting up beside him. Harry let out a long breath, pocketing the snitch once it was securely in its box. "A little." He tipped his face into the breeze, wishing it would blow away his troubles along with it. I received another letter from Draco this morning, unanswered. Malfoy manners. War wards are likely to deflect any form of contact, Charlie pointed out. Just in case. I'm sure he's fine." "But what if he's not?" Harry argued, his anxiety bubbling over. "What if the wards failed and Voldemort got him? Snape's been called twice since Mrs. Malfoy kicked the Death Eaters out." Charlie's voice was frustratingly calm. "You really think you know who wouldn't brag to all of them if he'd captured the Malfoys?" He had a point, and it eased Harry's worry just a little. "I just need to know he's okay." Saying goodbye on the train had been hard enough, especially knowing how heavily the death of his father weighed on Draco's mind. "I'm sure you'll hear from him soon," Charlie assured him, "once it's safe. From what Sirius tells me, he's probably just as worried about you in return." "What has Sirius told you?" Harry asked, raising his eyebrows, curious about how much his godfather had been gossiping. Charlie blushed faintly. "Not much," he replied quickly. "Just that Draco's a good kid, considering his father, and that Narcissa's probably got the wedding colours picked out already." He added this teasingly, and Harry felt a blush creep to his cheeks. He couldn't deny it. Narcissa had likely picked them out months ago. "Have you tried sending a letter with Kerry?" Charlie asked. Harry nodded morosely. "The Malfoy wards even keep elves out. Damn. Well, have you asked Sirius for ideas? Narcissa's his cousin. He might know something." "He's got enough to worry about with the trial," Harry insisted, shaking his head. For some reason, that made Charlie smile. "Like he wouldn't drop it all for you in a heartbeat," he retorted. "He's worried about you, Harry. I've tried telling him there's too much evidence to have him locked away again. And even if the worst does happen, we won't let Dumbledore get his hands on you. But in all, his fears about the trial aren't about going back to Azkaban for himself. He's just terrified of leaving you." Harry's heart twisted painfully at the thought. He doesn't need to be worrying about Draco on top of all that. After the trial, I'll ask him. There wasn't much point in doing anything now, anyway. The trial was tomorrow. "If you're sure," Charlie said with a shrug. They drifted together, lazily looping around the pitch. "He's scared of leaving you too, you know," Harry said abruptly. Charlie raised an eyebrow. "Pardon?" "Sirius. He might not say it to you, but I've seen the way he watches you lately. Like he might lose you if he looks away. The same way he watches me." Charlie looked thoughtful. "He's scared he might lose you through this trial." "He'll have to try harder than that to shake me," Charlie replied, smirking. "I'm not worried, Harry, and you shouldn't be either. The evidence is solid. Amelia's got it all under control. Sirius will get free." Harry wished he could share that level of confidence. "The twins have asked me to bring you both round to the shop after the trial," Charlie continued. "They mentioned something about you needing to inspect your investment." He raised an amused eyebrow. "Care to elaborate?" Harry explained how he had given the twins his Triwizard winnings, and Charlie burst out laughing. "Merlin, Harry, never tell Mum, she'll kill you." Harry's smile faltered, turning sad. "Have you spoken to her since, you know?" He didn't know the exact details, but he was aware that Mrs. Weasley had reacted strongly when she found out about Charlie and Sirius. "I tried," Charlie admitted. "I went over to the house, attempted to chat with her. It just ended in an argument." "Mum, I know George has told you she's never really agreed with our sexuality, and I know she's gotten on your case about it a few times." Harry scowled and nodded. "I think maybe she might have come around if it could have been anyone other than Sirius. Maybe a nice Romanian bloke or a good Gryffindor lad my age. But she never liked Sirius, no matter what. I think it's because he was a threat to her. With him around, she and Dad weren't the only parental figures in your life anymore. And he was just so unapologetically himself. She couldn't stand to see it." He grinned and winked at Harry. "I'll admit that's half the reason I started flirting with him in the first place, just to annoy Mum, if she ever noticed." He ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't expect to fall head over heels for the bloke." "He grows on you," Harry agreed fondly. Charlie laughed. "Doesn't he just?" He shook his head, an affectionate smile still curling his lips. "Mum will either come around or she won't. But Dad and the rest of the family don't care, and I've got your approval and Remus's, so those are the only opinions Sirius really cares about. As for the rest of them, he'll probably enjoy the outrage of it all." Harry snorted. That sounded just like Sirius. "I hope you know what you're getting into once he's free," he mock-warned. He'll be dragging you all over the place, wanting to show off his pretty bit of arm candy." Charlie laughed again, smirking deviously. "Fine by me," he drawled. "I can do arm candy. It's likely to be more seedy bars than fancy restaurants anyway. He knows it takes a lot of persuasion to get me into formal wear." "Ew," Harry mock-groaned, making Charlie snicker. "Get used to it, little brother. I live here now," Charlie teased, swooping in close to ruffle Harry's hair. Harry ducked away, scowling. "Can you really call me little brother when you're dating my godfather?" he joked, wiggling his eyebrows. "I think it's closer to stepson, if you look at it that way." "Only when we're married," Charlie shot back automatically, then blushed at the intent look Harry gave him. "So, when is it?" he asked pointedly. "Don't be a brat, son," Charlie retorted, then paused, making a face of disgust and shaking his head. "Nope, that's weird. I'm too young for that." Harry snickered. "Get used to it, Dad. You live here now," he taunted, quickly dodging as Charlie started to chase him. "You don't need another dad. You've got 2 of them in this house," the redhead pointed out dryly. 3 if you count Snape. He slowed down, a shudder running through him. "That's still the weirdest part of this whole situation." "You get used to it eventually," Harry assured him. "Give it enough time and you'll catch him having a genuine emotion. After that, it's a bit hard to take all the scowling seriously. Not to mention the flirting. Ugh, they're awful when they get going." "Too weird," Charlie insisted. "You've just been living here too long. I can't believe they hid you right under Dumbledore's nose." "He's not as omniscient as he thinks," Harry said, a little smugly. "I'm starting to realize that," Charlie agreed. They were pulled out of their half-hearted chasing when the bell rang to summon them for lunch. The pair landed quickly, shouldering their brooms. "Hey," Charlie called, reaching out one huge arm to wrap around Harry's shoulders. "I'm sure Draco's doing fine, right? Once Sirius is free, we'll figure out a way for you to write to him, or bring him here." He grinned, his cheeks dimpling. "I've got a lot of brotherly teasing to catch up on after all." "We've heard it all from the twins already," Harry told him, unbothered. "And Ginny." "The twins have got nothing on me," Charlie insisted, seemingly delighted by the challenge. "You'll see." Harry wondered if he should be nervous, but the feeling was quickly overshadowed by anticipation. Harry was too caught up in Charlie's unrestrained optimism to focus on anything else. He sat with his hands resting on his knees, his green eyes carefully surveying the group of wizards and witches opposite him. The trial of Sirius Black was about to begin. The Wizengamot loomed large, dressed in their identical deep plum robes. Even the familiar faces among them couldn't ease Harry's nerves, especially with Albus Dumbledore sitting there, looking far too pleased for Harry's comfort. "The Wizengamot calls the defendant, Sirius Orion Black," a voice announced. The side door of the courtroom opened, and Sirius was marched in between 2 auras. Unfortunately, these weren't auras Harry recognized. Tonks had been recused due to family ties, and Kingsley was on Wizengamot duty. Nevertheless, Sirius held his head high, offering Harry a reassuring smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He was forced into a chair at the center of the room, and when one of the auras tapped it with her wand, chains sprang up, wrapping around his arms and legs. Sirius didn't flinch. Minister Scrimgeour cleared his throat, but before he could speak, the main door slammed open. Harry's breath caught in his throat. Narcissa Malfoy strolled in, exuding an air of authority in her perfectly tailored charcoal robes. "Humble Wizengamot," she greeted, her grey eyes flashing. "Following the death of my husband, Lord Lucius Malfoy, I, Lady Narcissa Malfoy, claim his right of proxy guardianship over the houses of Malfoy, Burke, Lestrange, Rosier, Roll, Travers, Yaxley, and Mulciber, until such time as their rightful heir can claim them. Before Scrimger or anyone else could respond, a hum of magic filled the air, and the empty seats of the 8 houses she'd mentioned glowed briefly. The Wizengamot's magic had confirmed her claim, and as proof, her robes began to transfigure. Narcissa quickly donned the same plum robes as the others. Scrimger cleared his throat. "Very well then, Lady Malfoy, please take your seat so we may begin." Narcissa gracefully moved toward the Malfoy seat, catching Harry's eye as she passed. She looked incredibly pleased. Dumbledore, too, appeared quietly delighted by the proceedings. He likely believed Narcissa would vote against her cousin's freedom out of spite. He was in for a surprise. Scrimger paused, as if anticipating another twist, then brought the court to order with a firm slam of his gavel. Beside him, Percy Weasley was ready to take notes. "We are gathered here on this day, July 7th, 1996, to conduct the trial of Sirius Black," he announced. Black, who was previously sentenced to life in Azkaban for 14 counts of murder and breaking the statute of secrecy, escaped Azkaban in July of 1993. Scrimger turned to Sirius, his gaze icy. "Mr. Black, how do you plead?" "Not guilty," Sirius replied without hesitation. "Not of murder. I will admit I escaped prison, but I was there unlawfully to begin with." Scrimger sneered. "So you claim. Madam Bones," he called, turning to the woman. Harry felt relieved to see her there, unharmed and sharp-eyed. "I believe you have evidence for the defense." "I do, Minister," Amelia said, standing as she gathered a stack of parchments. "May I call the prisoner Peter Pettigrew in for questioning?" A flurry of whispers rippled through the crowd. Scrimger cleared his throat again. Harry felt a wave of unease wash over him, reminiscent of Umbridge's cold presence. "I am afraid, Madam Bones, that will not be possible. The man claiming to be Peter Pettigrew was found dead in his cell this morning." The chains rattled as Sirius visibly tensed. Harry flinched, his heart sinking. How could this be happening? He glanced at Dumbledore, whose eyes sparkled with a smugness that made Harry scowl. Had the headmaster orchestrated this somehow? Fortunately, Amelia remained unfazed. "That is unfortunate," she said calmly, "but it is fortunate that Aura Shacklebolt has already provided me with a Veritaserum-confirmed transcript of Pettigrew's interrogation. If the Wizengamot would please take a look." With a wave of her wand, parchment appeared on the desks of each member present. In the interrogation, Mr. Pettigrew admits to being the secret keeper for the Potter family and a servant of the Dark Lord. He confesses to framing Mr. Black for his murder and using his unregistered animagus form to escape, seeking refuge with a wizarding family disguised as a pet rat. Amelia allowed everyone a moment to read while Scrimger sat, scowling and ignoring his papers. It was clear he had already made up his mind. "A fanciful story, to say the least," he scoffed, "but without magical confirmation that the man was indeed Mr. Pettigrew, it cannot be taken as evidence of Mr. Black's innocence. Not alone, which is why Mr. Black has agreed to provide his own Veritaserum testimony in front of the Wizengamot today," Amelia countered. "Impossible," Scrimger snapped. "Black has already been found guilty once of this crime. A defendant cannot be placed under Veritaserum twice for the same confession." "That's where you're mistaken, Minister," Amelia replied, her smile unwavering. "Mr. Black has never given any form of Veritaserum testimony before a Wizengamot court. In fact, Mr. Black was never given any trial at all. Gasps rippled through the crowd of the Wizengamot. "What?" Scrimgeour's eyes narrowed in disbelief. With another wave of her wand, more parchment appeared. "You will see the arrest record for Mr. Black and his Azkaban registration," Amelia explained. "These documents were completed just 11 hours apart. Mr. Black was never given the chance to defend himself. In court, the evidence was never processed." With the late Barty Crouch Sr.'s signature on the papers, Mr. Black was sent to Azkaban without trial or due process. Her smile was razor-sharp. "So you see, Minister, Mr. Black is long overdue for his testimony." Scrimgeour turned pale. "Indeed," he growled. "Very well, bring forward the Veritaserum." Harry fought to suppress a broad smile as one of the Aurors approached with a bottle of potion. The potion was tested for authenticity using a complex spell, and then 3 drops were placed on Sirius's tongue. Amelia stepped forward, ready to begin the interrogation. "What is your name?" she asked. "Sirius Orion Black," Sirius replied, his voice vacant under the influence of the truth-telling potion. "What is your date of birth?" "November 3rd, 1959. Are you, or have you ever been, a servant of the Dark Lord Voldemort?" "No." Gasps rippled through the room. Amelia continued, undeterred. "Were you the secret keeper for Lily and James Potter?" "No." "Who was their secret keeper?" "Peter Pettigrew." Harry's hands clenched the fabric of his robes as he leaned forward in his seat. "Please recount the events of the night of October 31st, 1981, beginning with your arrival at the Potters' home." "I arrived on my motorbike at around 9 in the evening," Sirius stated blankly. "The house was half destroyed, and I could hear a baby crying. So I went inside trying to find Harry. He was in his cot with a cut on his head. I picked him up. I knew Voldemort would be after him. I had to keep him safe. When I left the house, Hagrid was there. He said Dumbledore had sent him to retrieve Harry, to take him somewhere safe. We argued. I didn't want him taking Harry anywhere. He accused me of betraying Lily and James, and I knew that until Peter was caught, everyone would think I did. So I let him take Harry. And my motorbike, and I went to find Peter. I caught up with him at his house, where he was packing, trying to escape. I chased him out onto the street. He yelled for everyone to hear that I was the secret keeper, that I was the reason Lily and James were dead. Then he blew up the street, cut off his own finger, and transformed into a rat. I tried to find him, but then the Aurors showed up. It broke Harry's heart to hear his godfather recount such a traumatic night in that empty, emotionless voice. "No further questions, Minister," Amelia declared. "I have a question," Scrimgeour growled. "You were laughing, Black, when the Aurors came for you. Why?" "It was the first time Peter had shown any sort of cunning," Sirius responded. "I was laughing because I couldn't believe he had the brains to do it. And laughing was easier than crying." Scrimgeour scowled even harder at that response, but he waved his hand, and the antidote was given to Sirius, who blinked away the vacant stare. "If Black was innocent the whole time, why did he break out of Azkaban to go after Potter?" Scrimgeour pointed out. That made Amelia smile. "For that, I would like to bring Mr. Harry Potter to the stand." Harry stood up and approached the chair Amelia gestured to. "Objection," Dumbledore interjected. "Mr. Potter is a minor. He cannot be subject to Veritaserum." "No potions," Amelia promised. "Just questions. Mr. Potter, do you consent?" "I consent," Harry confirmed. "Excellent. Have a seat." Harry sat down. "Mr. Potter, please recount to the court the events of the night of June 27th, 1993, to the best of your knowledge." Harry had prepared for this moment. He was ready. In a clear, steady voice, he explained what had happened the night Sirius dragged Hermione to the Shrieking Shack. He glossed over some of the details, the Marauder's map, some of the exact things said, and the extent of Snape's involvement, but he spoke truthfully, determined to share his side of the story. But the crucial details were there. Sirius's declaration of innocence and Pettigrew's acknowledgement of guilt. In all the chaos of Professor Lupin transforming, Pettigrew escaped, Harry explained. Professor Snape got knocked out trying to protect us. Sirius and I ran to the lake for safety, but then the Dementors arrived. I cast a Patronus to keep them at bay, and then I passed out. A Patronus, able to fend off 100 Dementors at the age of 13, Scrimgeour blustered. Preposterous. "Minister, if I may," Madame Marchbanks interjected, raising her hand. "I witnessed Mr. Potter perform a Patronus during his recent OWL examinations. It certainly had the strength for such a task, and I fully believe his account." Scrimgeour frowned as an impressed murmur spread through the room. "I can perform the spell right now if you'd like," Harry offered, but Scrimgeour glared at him. "Underage magic will not be necessary," he snapped. "I have a few further questions for Mr. Potter, if I may." Amelia continued, making Harry tense. What more could she possibly want to ask him? "Mr. Potter, could you please describe, to the best of your knowledge, the events of your arrival at the home of Mr. and Mrs. Dursley on the night of October 31st, 1981? "Objection," Dumbledore interjected. "This questioning is irrelevant to the case and a breach of Mr. Potter's privacy." "It is relevant, Minister, I assure you," Amelia insisted. "I'm happy to answer," Harry added. Scrimgeour gave a curt nod. "I only know what I've been told since, I was a baby," Harry admitted, prompting a few chuckles from the audience. "My aunt found me on the doorstep on the morning of November 1st when she went out to get the milk delivery. I was left with a letter explaining that my parents had been killed and that for my own safety, Aunt and Uncle had to take me in." "Do you know who wrote this letter?" Amelia pressed. "Albus Dumbledore, ma'am." "So, Albus Dumbledore instructed Rubeus Hagrid to bring you to your Muggle relatives immediately after the murder of your parents, where he left you on a doorstep overnight in freezing cold weather, with nothing but a letter as explanation." Amelia's tone was even, but her eyes were bright. "Yes, as far as I know." "Albus Dumbledore is not the one on trial," Scrimgeour interjected. Amelia's smile widened. "One more question, Minister." She turned back to Harry. "Mr. Potter, are you aware that both the wills of Lily and James Potter expressly forbid your guardianship from being turned over to Mrs. Potter's Muggle sister?" Harry gaped at her. I didn't know they had wills." When she hadn't mentioned anything, he had assumed that the matter had come up empty. "Let the Wizengamot see." Amelia waved her wand. "According to the records at Gringotts Bank, the wills of Lily and James Potter were both sealed by Professor Albus Dumbledore 4 hours after the arrest of Mr. Sirius Black, but prior to his admittance to Azkaban. While Professor Dumbledore was, by technicality, Mr. Potter's legal head of house due to the proxy offered by James Potter in the event of his death and Mr. Black's inability to claim the position, approximately 7 hours later, around the same time Mr. Black was being taken to Azkaban prison without trial, Mrs. Petunia Dursley found an infant Harry Potter on her doorstep, after the child had waited there for an unspecified amount of time. Amelia looked up at the Wizengamot, coolly staring down Scrimgeour, not even acknowledging Dumbledore. "It is a travesty enough that the heir to the noble and most ancient House of Black could be imprisoned for life without trial. It would be much, much worse to consider that it was done to secure the unlawful placement of Harry Potter with his Muggle relatives. Relatives? Harry stared at her, incredulous. That was a bold move. Dumbledore looked as if he had just choked on one of his lemon drops. "Objection," the headmaster called out once he regained his composure. "As Minister Scrimgeour stated, I am not the one on trial here. The matter of Harry Potter's safety is far more complicated than you could possibly understand, Amelia dear." "I'm sure you believe that, Professor," Amelia replied flatly. "The crux of the issue is that Mr. Black was arrested, sentenced and convicted without a trial, all while his godson, Mr. Potter, was taken from the wizarding world against the wishes of his deceased parents, and Mr. Black was absent and unable to advocate for him. I wouldn't go so far as to suggest that Mr. Black was intentionally framed for his crimes, but it is evident that a grave miscarriage of justice occurred that night. We are obligated to rectify what we can. Sirius Black is an innocent man, and I move for all charges against him to be dropped, along with the immediate restoration of his freedoms and guardianship of Harry James Potter." "All against the motion?" Scrimgeour droned, raising his own wand. Harry craned his neck, counting the number of wands that went up. Hope surged in his chest. It wasn't nearly enough, surely. When he turned to Dumbledore, the man was staring intently at Narcissa. He looked genuinely surprised that her wand was not raised. "All in favour of the motion?" Dumbledore raised his wand, as did Amelia, both Weasley brothers, Kingsley, and a handful of others. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Narcissa Malfoy raised her wand high into the air. A long, tense silence followed until Percy Weasley cleared his throat. "The motion is passed," he declared somewhat nervously. Scrimgeour had no choice but to slam down his gavel. "Sirius Black is cleared of all charges," he announced, scowling. Immediately the chains around Sirius's limbs fell limp. Harry leaped to his feet and threw himself into his godfather's embrace. "We did it!" he exclaimed, his chest swelling with joy and relief, making it hard to catch his breath. Sirius planted a kiss on the top of Harry's head, and then straightened, keeping his arm around Harry's shoulders. "Before the Wizengamot is dismissed, I, Sirius Orion Black, hereby claim the black seat of my birthright." The seat glowed brightly, and a lordship ring materialized on Sirius's hand. "I also claim, with permission, proxy guardianship of both the Potter and Peverell seats until my godson, Harry Potter, comes of age and desires them himself." 2 more seats illuminated softly, and Harry felt a warmth spread through his chest. "I give my permission," he said aloud, uncertain if it was necessary, but wanting to eliminate any doubt. The glow intensified, and a hum of magic filled the chamber. It was done. Dumbledore looked furious. "Wizengamot dismissed," Scrimgeour barked, preventing any further changes. Instantly, everyone's purple robes reverted to the outfits they had arrived in. The crowd began to disperse, and Dumbledore, now clad in a blindingly bright lemon-yellow robe, approached them. Sirius tightened his grip on Harry's shoulder. "Congratulations, my boy," the headmaster said, smiling. His eyes lacked their usual twinkle, which made Harry grin. "You understand, of course, that Amelia's evidence regarding the wills is circumstantial at best. I would have done everything in my power to keep you out of prison, but my priority had to be Harry's safety. By the time that was secured, it was too late for me to interfere." "Oh, I understand completely, Headmaster," Sirius replied evenly. Dumbledore's smile widened. "Glad to hear it. Harry, it's good to see you looking so well," he added, finally turning his attention to his student. Could I have a word if you're not too busy?" "Sorry, Professor, but Remus is waiting for us at home," Harry replied, putting on the most apologetic smile he could muster. "They wouldn't let him in because of the whole werewolf thing, you know. But he'll be really pleased to hear the good news. Maybe another time?" Of course. Enjoy your celebrations." Harry and Sirius didn't wait for the Professor to disappear. They were already heading toward the doors where Bill and Charlie were waiting. They paused as a familiar blonde head approached. "Congratulations, cousin," Narcissa drawled, and Sirius grinned. "Thank you, Sissa, dear. My condolences for the loss of your husband," he added with a hint of sarcasm. "Though I hear you've been doing some spring cleaning to work through your grief." "Quite." Narcissa's lips twitched with the faintest of smiles as she held out an envelope to Harry. He immediately recognized the handwriting on the outside, and his heart lurched. "My son sends his regards, Mr. Potter," Narcissa said, watching as Harry carefully tucked the letter away. "Good afternoon, gentlemen." With that she swept away, apparating from the chamber at the threshold. By the time they reached their two red-headed companions, Harry was practically skipping. "Lord Pruitt, Lord Weasley," Sirius greeted them with an exaggerated bow. Charlie smirked. "Lord Black," he replied, offering his arm with a flourish. "Shall we?" And so, with Charlie on one side and Harry on the other, Sirius Black walked out of the Wizengamot chamber, a free man at last.